30 seconds to Shaw. We're live on Shaw.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So before we get a meeting going here, I just want to recognize and thank all of our broadcasting and media partners for broadcasting our meeting and reporting on it. I also want to acknowledge and thank the community. I think the response of the community over the last few weeks has been really positive, and you've seen our case counts drop significantly. You've seen the number of positive cases confirmed drop. And that's, in my opinion, entirely due to the really great work that people in the community are doing to follow public health advice. And I want to thank them for that. And I wanted to encourage them to keep that up so we can give our vaccine program some time. Hopefully we'll see that accelerate come the end of May, June. And I'd encourage everybody, when you have an opportunity to get your vaccine, to line up and get your vaccine. Madam Clerk, if we can start our meeting, please.
Under agenda item 1, a motion by Councillors Bruni and Shoemaker, resolved that the minutes of regular council meeting of April 26, 2021 be approved.
All in favor? Motion carried.
And under agenda item 3, declaration of pecuniary interest, Councillor Nero has declared with respect to the memorandum of settlement with Sault Ste. Marie professional firefighters, as his brother was employed as a firefighter for part of the 2019 settlement. Councillor Vezo Allen has declared a pecuniary interest on the same item as a family member is employed as a firefighter. Councillor Shoemaker has declared with respect to 249 Old Garden River Road and 260 Mill Creek Drive, the planning application, as the applicant is a client of the law firm. And Councillor Hollingford has declared with respect to the same item as the applicant is a family member.
Any other conflicts, Council? Seeing none.
Under agenda item 4, a motion by Councillors Bruni and Hilsinger, resolved that the agenda for May 10, 2021 City Council meeting as presented be approved.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
So under agenda item 5, proclamations, agenda item 5.1 is Personal Support Workers Day.
Okay, I will get to that proclamation. I'm just making sure all the councillors are on my main screen here. Councillor Shoemaker wasn't, but I have everybody now. So I have a proclamation to declare Personal Support Workers Day. Whereas it is important to recognize all the personal support workers who are at the front lines of our healthcare system. Whereas PSWs have selflessly and tirelessly provided care to our communities most vulnerable through an extraordinary, challenging year, a year made more precarious by COVID-19 pandemic. Whereas they've given so much of themselves every day, sacrificing their own health, safety, time with their families, and even their own lives to ensure the safety and care of our seniors and the vulnerable. Whereas PSWs ensure that people in long-term care facilities or in their homes are cared and safe and cared for. Now more than ever, we are thankful to our PSWs, along with all healthcare workers on the front lines caring for those who are affected by COVID-19. Whereas PSWs deserve a recognition and respect for everything they have done throughout the pandemic and the challenging working conditions they face every day. Now, therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim May 19, 2021 as Personal Support Worker Day in the City of Sault Ste. Marie, and ask the community to celebrate the contributions of personal support workers and what they do in our community. Thank you.
Agenda item 5.2, Menstrual Health Day.
Whereas Menstrual Hygiene Day raises awareness of the challenges menstruators face in their ability to experience healthy periods with dignity. Menstrual Hygiene Day highlights the importance of proper menstrual hygiene through public education and advocacy. Whereas the day also raises awareness about the stigma surrounding periods, and calls for menstrual equity by providing marginalized communities with access to free menstrual products. Whereas the continued support at the local, regional, national levels is helping break the silence and build awareness about the fundamental role that good menstrual hygiene management plays in the lives of people who menstruate. And whereas during this challenging time and every day, let us aim to be conscious of the needs of others, promote open dialogue to help counter taboos surrounding periods, learn new and creative ways to manage menstrual health issues, and promote equitable access for hygiene needs and products. Now, therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim May 28th, 2021 as Menstrual Health Day in the City of Sault Ste. Marie, and encourage support of organizations and individuals committed to raising awareness about the needs of the community through education and support to ensure the health and well-being of our communities are improved.
Agenda item 5.3 is Falun Dafa Day.
Whereas Falun Dafa is an ancient Chinese cultivation practice of mind and body involving gentle exercise, meditation, and the guiding principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. Whereas since public teaching began in 1992, millions of people have experienced great improvements in their physical health and moral character. Whereas this year, over 100 million people from over 100 countries across the world celebrate the 29th anniversary of World Falun Dafa Day and stand united together for the freedom to practice without oppression and to live by the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. And therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim May 13th, 2021 as World Falun Dafa Day in the City of Sault Ste. Marie.
Agenda item 5.4, May is Museum Month.
Whereas throughout Sault Ste. Marie, museums, art galleries, and heritage sites reflect our local history and culture and contribute to our economy by welcoming visitors and tourists to our community. Whereas the 700 museums in Ontario continue to attract visitors to their respective communities virtually during the pandemic and represent a valuable aspect of the education system, with close to 80% of Ontario museums offering programming linked to school curriculum made possible by the efforts of 35,500 volunteers. Whereas this month helps increase awareness of museums and celebrates the contributions these institutions make to the quality of life, education, and economic development. And whereas this year's theme, The Future of Museums, Recover and Reimagine, highlights the evolution of museums to meet the challenges of today and emerge stronger for the future. Whereas May 18th, 2021 is International Museum Day to celebrate museums that make their communities distinct and vibrant places to live, work, visit, and invest. And therefore, I, Mayor Christian Provenzano, do hereby proclaim May 2021 as May is Museum Month and encourage citizens to virtually visit our local museums through their websites and social media.
Agenda item 5.5, Asian Heritage Month.
Whereas in May 2002, the Government of Canada signed an official declaration to recognize May as Asian Heritage Month. And whereas over the last 2 centuries, immigrants have journeyed to Canada from East Asia, Southern Asia, Western, and Southeast Asia, representing many languages, ethnicities, and religious traditions, and contributing to Canada's cultural mosaic. Whereas Asian Heritage Month in Canada is an opportunity to learn about the accomplishments and contributions that Canadians of Asian origin continue to make to the growth and prosperity of our country and community. We also reflect on the trauma and anti-Asian sentiments that require a shared commitment to undoing systemic anti-Asian racism and discrimination. And therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby proclaim May 2021 as Asian Heritage Month and invite all members of the community to take part in events in our community and across the country.
Agenda item 5.6 is Brain Tumor Awareness Month.
Whereas the causes of and cure for brain tumors are unknown, and early detection and treatment is vital to prolong and improve survival. And whereas brain tumors strike people of all ages, crossing all economic, social, and ethnic boundaries. Whereas brain tumors are the most common cause of solid cancer death in children and young adults. Whereas approximately 27 Canadians a day are diagnosed with a brain tumor. Whereas the mission of the Brain Tumor Foundation of Canada is to reach every Canadian affected by a brain tumor through support, education, information, and research. Now therefore, I, Christian Provenzano, as Mayor of the City of Sault Ste. Marie, do hereby declare that May is Brain Tumor Awareness Month in the City of Sault Ste. Marie, and to ask everyone to wear gray on May 27th, 2021, to raise awareness about brain tumors and to show support for those who have brain tumors. Thank you. Madam Clerk, we can move on to 5.7.
Yes, the PUC, Sault Smart Grid, Jim Bonifero, Chair, and Robert Brewer, President, Chief Executive Officer, are in the meeting.
Welcome to Council, Jim. Welcome to Council, Mr. Brewer. I know that you have additional team from the PUC here with you. I'll leave that to you to introduce. This is certainly an exciting presentation for us to receive. I can personally say that I'm thrilled to have you here to share this news, and I'll reserve my comments for post-presentation, but I want to thank you for being here today and for being here to share this news with our community and to seek our approval to move forward. With that, Mr. Bonifero, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for having us, Council. It is an exciting project for us, and we're thrilled to be here. PUC has taken on this project for a number of years, and I think there's a few thank yous at the outset. Certainly, Council, for your patience with the PUC board, and Mr. Mayor, for your confidence and support and patience through the process. To Councillor Christian, who sat on the board through a number of these iterations of this project, and to Councillor Shoemaker, who back in his day on the board saw the initial proposals. Former Councillor Butland was certainly passionate about this project. I'm proud to say that the board of the PUC stood firm by their ethics and their guiding principles, that we're now bringing this project forward based on the fact that we set up guidelines for approval. One of the key ones was that this would have zero impact on a customer's bill, and you'll see in Mr. Brewer's presentation that in fact we've been able to achieve that. This project is coming in at a significantly lower cost than initially proposed, and I would suggest that it's even more inclusive and a more in-depth project than was originally proposed. It's one of many projects. You've heard that we've done the energy storage project with the Sault Area Hospital that will help them reduce their costs by millions of dollars, allowing them to put more money into frontline healthcare. We continue to work with our industrial and commercial customers on other innovative ways. Our mandate is to be curious and innovative, and I think we prove that time and time again. We believe that as an organization, PUC is more than the supplier of your power and your water. We believe we should be supporting our industrial and commercial customers, and this is a way of doing that. We believe we should be supporting our residential customers all the way from, if it's simply helping you understand your bill, supporting you through initiatives to reduce your energy consumption, assisting you with the available grants and programs out there that you can access in any other way. Things like electric cars that are coming on board. If you're thinking of that, we would like to be a part of helping you with that decision and walking you through that. So having said all that, especially moving forward, again, Mr. Mayor, thank you, and thank you to Council for giving us this opportunity. We're excited. I commend staff for all of the hard work they've done to get us to this point. And with that, I'll pass it over to Mr. Brewer for a more detailed presentation.
Thanks, Jim. And good evening, Mayor and Council. With me from the PUC today is Kelly McClellan, who's our VP Finance, Mark Fott, who is our Director of Finance, and Jairus Patterson, who's our Communication Supervisor. Today, we're pleased to announce that PUC Distribution has received approval for the Smart Grid project. This is a transformational project for our utility. It upgrades and future-proofs our system, and it reduces the energy consumption of our customers. It also significantly increases reliability, and it saves the province a considerable amount of carbon dioxide emissions through reduced requirements for electricity generation. So Rachel, if you could just put up the slide deck. Second slide, please. So what do we mean with the term smart grid? So smart grid is a system of systems. In the case of the Sault Smart Grid, It's the integration of volt bar optimization technology, distribution automation, and AMI integration to create significant benefits for our customers. And as you can see from the visual, it integrates a lot of different features. The Sioux Smart Grid enables us as a utility to have insights into our systems that we didn't have before and allows us to better enable new and emerging technologies. Next slide, please. Volt-VAR optimization, or VVO, allows us to reduce the customer's energy consumption by optimizing the voltage that they receive to their homes. It also reduces system losses through increased efficiencies in the distribution system. All told, VVO will result in annual savings of approximately 2.3 million in energy. Next slide, please. Distribution automation is the system's ability to self-heal, and DA is all about improving customer reliability. By integrating smart and automated devices into the distribution system, the grid can more precisely isolate faults and restore systems outside of the affected area. DA uses computer and communication technology, uses advanced software, and remotely operable high voltage switchgear. And we expect to see reliability improvements of between 15 and 30% across the system. Reliability carries with it defined value, and the 20-year net present value for the reliability benefits is $33 million. That's a considerable benefit for the customers in Sault Ste. Marie. Next slide, please. AMI, or Advanced Metering Infrastructure, leverages some of the benefits of smart meters and creates improved communications and analysis tools. It provides better and more timely information to customers, provides a needed outage management system, and provides better data flow across the system. Over the next decade, the Sault Smart Grid will reduce provincial emissions of carbon dioxide equivalents by almost 45,000 metric tons. Our vision at PUC is improving communities through curiosity and innovation. And the Sault Smart Grid embodies our vision by achieving energy savings, better reliability, better customer communication, and significant environmental benefits by using proven technologies in an innovative way. Sault Ste. Marie, as a result of the Sault Smart Grid project, will have the first community-wide smart grid in Canada. Next slide, please. For our customers, SSG will reduce their energy consumption, it improves their reliability, and it improves planning and data reporting systems. It will achieve an average energy consumption decrease of 2.7%, which results in energy savings of 2.3 million and net benefits to the customer of $617,000. Next slide. Next steps for the project are listed on this screen. We've achieved OEB and the PUC board approval. We're hoping for shareholder approval today. Following that, we'll execute the EPC agreement. We'll start off phase 1 of engineering. And following that, some early works will start later in 2021, and the bulk of construction is slated for 2022. We expect to see substantial completion of the project by the end of 2022, with final commissioning spring of 2023. And March 31st of 2023 represents the NRCan contribution agreement ending. In summary, the Sault Smart Grid is a transformative project that will significantly benefit our customers, our city, and our utility. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you very much for that, Rob. Before we get to questions, and I have a few councillors who have indicated to me that they did have questions and comments, I wanted to make some comments of my own. I don't have any questions at this point. As Jim noted, we've been working on and focused on this project for a number of years now. I think it's been in front of us certainly the entire time that I've been the mayor of the community and the director on the PUC board. And I really can't overstate how glad I am to see it come to today. I think it's an incredibly important project for our community. Um, Energy certainly is an industry of today, but it's going to be a really impactful industry of the future. And as more electrical vehicles come online and more distributed energy capacity comes online, our ability to be innovative and to be a leader is going to be critical. And I think this project helps get us there. It is great to be, there's some risk in being the first at something, but when you want to be a leader, you have to take that risk. And it's a risk that I think we have taken in a very measured way. And in that respect, I do want to commend the tremendous amount of work that's gone into this project at the staff level. Rob, to you and your team, your executive team and the staff at the PUC have put hours into this project and getting it to this point. I want to thank the leadership of the board of directors. This project would not have come to pass but for the board's leadership, Jim Bonifero and the team at the whole governance board. It's been a pleasure working with all of you for the last 6 years, and you've helped bring this project to where it is in your community. Mr. Bonifero mentioned Councillor Butland, former Councillor Butland, former Mayor Butland. It was a project he was very passionate about, certainly a project that he worked closely on and communicating with me on for the whole time that we were on council together. And I want to recognize his contributions. I also want to recognize the support here from city staff to get us to where we are today. And critically, I want to recognize our MP, Terry Sheehan, for delivering on a very significant investment from the federal government, without which we wouldn't have been able to make this program. I don't think this project build neutral. So it's certainly something to be excited about. I think it's something that positions us as a forward-looking, innovative community, and it's something that I think people will follow suit on. As and until then, and as and until people can get their projects up and running, we will have our project up and running, and we will have a fully integrated community-wide smart grid that companies and economy can come here and look at and pilot and test on. And I think there's a whole bunch of immediate benefits that Rob's told us about, but I think there's a whole bunch of future benefits that we have not seen yet, and that we will with time. So it's something that I've certainly been proud to be a part of and supported over the last number of years. And I want to point out that big projects like this, they don't happen with a ton of persistence, a ton of effort, and a ton of different people working together in a common goal. That's what you have here. You had an incredible amount of teamwork. So thank you to the executive management team, Rob, and your team at the PUC and the board for really making a difference here and making this happen. And Councillor Christian, we miss you at the PUC board. It was a pleasure when you were there, and I want to thank you for the contributions you made to this during your time. So I am certainly going to support moving forward on this. I expect council will too, but I'll kind of give you the chance now to ask questions and say your piece. And then we could, I think we have to, Madam Clerk, go into session as shareholder to vote, and we'll do that. So I have on my list here Councillor Shoemaker, Councillor Gardy, and then Councillor Dufour, and then Councillor Christian, and then Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Gardy.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The impact, personally, I feel that the impact of the project can't be overstated. I'm confident that this will not only set the utility, but our community on a new trajectory to innovate more and to continue to pursue a knowledge-based economy. This helps businesses, as Mr. Brewer mentioned, but also helps residents, it helps the environment. It's just a wonderful job, everybody involved. So I'd just like to congratulate those that you've mentioned, and Mr. Brewer and Mr. Bonifero have mentioned on a great job, on your resilience specifically, and your success. I just have one question, Mr. Mayor, if I could.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Bonifero, I suspect, what over the course of the next handful of months, Mr. Brewer and or Mr. Bonifero, what could the community expect to see, if anything, in and around the community as it relates to this project? How will they see it unfold in its immediate steps, if you will?
I'll pass that to Rob. Rob can take that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Gardy. The project's expected to have about a 6 to 8 month engineering, so detailed engineering works, which will commence shortly after we get shareholder approval. About halfway through that, we'll start with some early construction work. So you'll see some what we call make ready. So it's where we have to adjust pole heights, and you know that we have to do that in order to put extra material or devices onto poles. We may have to increase the height. So you'll see some early works going on, getting ready for the installation of the equipment. But the bulk of the construction will happen throughout the 2022 calendar year. So mainly prep and sort of make ready type stuff this year.
Much appreciated. Congratulations. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer my similar compliments and congratulations to the board and staff of PUC for what I think is a really exciting project. My question was, if you could, Mr. Brewer, could you speak a little bit to some of the steps that the PUC is taking to protect the cybersecurity of our upcoming smart grid and the conversion to remote access digital devices as being a more and more critical part of our municipal infrastructure? Can you speak to some of the ways that the build out is considering that?
It's a very large focus for us with respect to protecting our systems. It's being built or designed into those systems, which is the best way, of course, to develop security within your networks. And so it's a very large focus, and it continues to be a large focus in almost every aspect of what the utility does. So we'll have closed networks, we'll have limited access in terms of what can be done. Certain devices that can be accessed will only have limited function by remote access. And so a number of different things that we employ to ensure that we can manage potential downside risk.
Thanks very much, Mr. Brewer. Happy to hear it. And congratulations to all. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, next I have Councillor Christian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to take the opportunity on a personal level to thank Jim and Rob, your executive staff, all staff at PUC, and the board, of course. Mr. Mayor, I think you hit on all the key points. So I just want to personally thank them for a job well done. I know, Mr. Mayor, you and I, when I started on the board with Councillor Shoemaker, we had conversations about, transforming the PUC, or at least hoping that they would transform themselves to become more of a value-added entity within the city, to be a real asset and community partner. And I think, as evidenced through the Smart Grid project, we're seeing that transformation. It's no longer just a utility, a company of distributive power. They're starting to do things in the community that are helping us grow the community. And the PUC has moved into the 21st century and providing the types of things that I know you envision, Mr. Mayor, and I certainly supported that all the way. This is really a milestone. And you've already hit on the point that this was a project that was very, very intense, very technical. We saw different versions of it, and I really commend Jim and Rob specifically for staying committed to this project and seeing it come to fruition at a much, much lower price than we originally looked at. So just congratulations all around. I hope the community can appreciate what we're doing right now and what this means to us. I do think we have a window of opportunity. I hope we can get the message out there that Sault Ste. Marie is trying to be very progressive. We're a leader in this technology, and I think the PUC can continue to play an important role in driving that message throughout the province and beyond. So thank you very much, and congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor Christian. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Minor comments, not questions, but I, like Councillor Christian noted when we were on the board previously, this project was pretty close. I don't think I'm speaking out of school here. This project was pretty close to being turned down because it was the anticipated cost of it was so significant, and the board at that time decided to look at it from a perspective of not just increased reliability of our energy grid, but from an economic development perspective, from a potential growth perspective, and decided to, as we now see, redesign the system, bring it in at a much lower cost, look at it a bit more holistically, and I think we are seeing the results of the great work that Mr. Brewer, Mr. Bonifero, and their teams and their predecessors even, certainly Mr. Brewer's predecessor worked on this during his term as well. But really, it sounds to me like the ball was picked up from Mr. Brewer and his team to get it over the finish line, which is most important, of course. So this is not just reliability of the grid, this is economic development. We will be able to market ourselves as a place with the most reliable power source for any business looking to set up here. And I think we can sell ourselves on that, on the alternative energy capital of North America. And it all ties in beautifully to be able to package and market ourselves to anybody looking to develop here. So great to see this project come in. And I know I'm probably not the only one that wouldn't support it if there were going to be an impact on the bill. So extra great to see it come in without an impact on the bill for residents. So thank you to Mr. Brewer, Mr. Bonifero, and everybody who helped get it here. And Councillor Christian didn't mention it, so I will, to Councillor Butland. I know Mr. Mayor Provenzano did, but to Councillor Butland, who I think planted the seed on this idea many years ago, deserves some praise for his role in getting us to where we are today. So thank you all.
Okay, Councillor Bruni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it's great to have this report in front of us, and hopefully all councillors will vote on it. Just a quick question to Mr. Brewer. Mr. Brewer, you mentioned customer savings. You mentioned the 2.7% and approximately $60,000 a year. Maybe if you can explain that to the viewers and to the people of Sault Ste. Marie, exactly how you come to the 2.7% savings.
Sure thing. Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Bruni, the 2.7% is a conservative estimate based on similar size or similar pilot projects that have been done amongst a number of utilities in North America. As an example, there was one, the Hydro Ottawa did quite recently, where they achieved over 3% savings. So we tried to take a conservative number with respect to trying to understand bill impacts, and we're pretty confident that we'll hit the 2.7 or better. The way that 2.7% is achieved is through managing voltage more actively. So we're able to, within the tolerance for voltage, we're able to supply it closer to the bottom end of the tolerance, which achieves energy savings. And for the most part, does not result in even anything noticeable from a customer's perspective, other than perhaps their appliances actually run a little bit better at that lower end of voltage. So it's something that with no effort on their end, they end up seeing some significant savings. The 2.7% number, when we use that, we translate that across our energy purchases over the course of the year, results in about $2.3 million in energy savings. And the cost, if you look at putting the system in place over the long term, the annual cost is about 1.7, and that results in a net benefit to customers of a little over $600,000, $617,000. So the project pays for itself and then some, and it's nice when we're able to do that.
Thank you very much, Rob, and good luck with it.
Thank you.
Council, that's the extent of the parties on my list. Okay, Madam Clerk, we're in your hands here.
So I have a motion by Councillors Nero and Hilsinger, resolved that City Council is now authorized to meet in open session as the sole shareholder of PUC Inc. And further be it resolved that City Council appoints Mayor Christian Provenzano as Council's proxy to vote on a resolution of the shareholder of PUC Inc.
All in favor? Carried.
So I'll read the resolution of the shareholder. Be it resolved that in accordance with Clause G of Schedule A of the shareholder agreement with PUC Inc., that the City of Sault Ste. Marie hereby approves the capital expenditure and associated financing for the Smart Grid project. The undersigned, being the sole shareholder of the corporation, hereby signs each and every one of the foregoing resolutions pursuant to the provisions of the Ontario Business Corporations Act.
Okay, Council, I'm certainly eager to sign this resolution at your direction, so I'll ask you for that direction now. All in favor of the resolution? I note, Mr. Bonifero and Mr. Brewer, that there was unanimous support for it. So I will be happy. I've been happy to sign a lot of resolutions over the last 6 years, both council resolutions and shareholder resolutions for the PUC. I don't think anyone more than this one. So they're been approved, and I'll get that signed for you today. Madam Clerk, do we have additional resolutions?
Not on this matter.
Thank you for your time today, gentlemen, and we look forward to much more success in the future as we develop and implement this program. Thank you. Madam Clerk, that brings us, I think, to, we have another delegation.
Yes, we do. With respect to agenda item 7.3.1, the Downtown Plaza update, Tom Vare, the Deputy CAO Community Services, and Colin Berman with Brooke McElroy are in the meeting.
Okay, so I see Mr. Vare there. Welcome, Mr. Vare. I'm just looking for Mr. Berman. He might be on my next screen, so I'm just going to find him. I don't see him here on my. Oh, there he is. Okay. Okay, Mr. Vare, we're in your hands. Welcome to the meeting, Mr. Berman. We're happy to have you here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. We're pleased to present to you tonight an update on the Downtown Plaza project. We do have a brief PowerPoint presentation for you. So if Madison wouldn't mind bringing that up, we'll walk through the slides with you. So, Mr. Mayor, if it's okay, I can get going because I had a bit of the preamble on the project, and then Colin will handle the more design-centric things.
Please do. And then when they sort out the share screen, they'll sort that out.
Sure. Council, a number of activities have taken place since our last update. Staff have worked with the consultants to refine the plaza design based on the input from the public and also staff suggestions from across departments in the city. We completed the acquisitions of 535 Queen Street and 516 26 Bay Street. And we worked with the PUC to finalize the electrical servicing requirements for the plaza. And we also completed a Class C cost estimate for the project. The majority of the community feedback received was quite positive. We provided a summary report in the council package with more details on the consultations with the public. There was a lot of interest in the different components of the plaza. Certainly a strong desire for food and retail options, requests for additional parking, and requests for other items like additional fire pits in the winter, additional green space and plantings, and also an emphasis on safety and security for the plaza. So the revised design being presented tonight for approval estimates $7.8 million construction and related soft costs to the plaza, which includes $890,000 of contingencies. So from the preliminary estimate that was provided to council previously, the higher cost is largely due to higher cost of a material and equipment for the plaza, some of the utilities work, And I must add that the PUC just here has been great in doing all they can to keep the costs down related to the servicing requirements of the plaza. And we've also added some scope to the plaza, which increased the cost, and that being the additional footprint of 516 and 26 Bay, which wasn't initially anticipated, but is a great addition to the plaza, and also some services for the mobile retail units. So the revised design delivers an exciting downtown plaza that staff believes will achieve our objectives. It features a water feature, a skating rink, play structure, a stage with a digital screen. It will have food, drink, and retail opportunities, and it will also serve as an attractive gathering space in the downtown that will really be a focal point and an anchor in our downtown. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Colin Berman of Brooke McElroy. He's going to talk further about the design and the different elements of the plaza.
Great. Thank you, Tom. If I could just have the next slide, please. Perfect. Hello, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Thank you for having me again. My name is Colin Berman, and I'm a principal with Brooke McElroy and the lead designer for this project in downtown Sault Ste. Marie. I remain very excited about this project because this is my hometown, and I know it will have a huge impact on downtown. Since we last met, we have been busy refining the design for the Downtown Civic Plaza with city staff and our consultant team. We have made many changes and improvements to the design based on further technical study, consultations with internal and external stakeholders, and responding to costing inputs. It is important to note, as Tom will also summarize, that some fundamentals of the project have changed with new property acquisitions and an evolving program. As you can see on the rendered plan on this slide, the configuration of the plaza has not changed. There's an upper room that is anchored by a skating and water play feature. The upper room is also home to a washroom, changing, and mechanical building. The lower event room is a flexible open space, anchored by a stage and several mobile retail units. This room is designed to be flexible and open so it can accommodate a variety of events and activities. It is also directly linked to a possible future outdoor market building, or indoor market building, excuse me. Between the upper and lower rooms, there's a set of amphitheater seats, a play structure, a large planting bed, and trees. Next to the lower event room, an expanded parking area will provide convenient and accessible parking stalls to serve the plaza and indoor market. To ensure that the plaza remains on budget, we have optimized the design approach for the water feature, materials, furnishings, and lighting. Next slide, please. The skating rink and water play feature is the main draw in the upper room of the plaza. The skating rink now has a large planted island near to Queen Street. Skating around the island will add to the skating experience. During the summer months, the skating pad transforms into a water play feature. Water jets in the planted island will cover the upper portion of the rink. The water jets are controllable, so will feel unpredictable, which is super fun and engaging for kids. The southern portion of the rink slab will be filled with movable tables and chairs that will be a great place for parents to sit and watch their kids play or to drink a coffee from the mobile retail units. Next slide, please. At 750 square meters, the skating rink will still be large enough to host a big crowd of skaters. And that 750 square meters, the same size as what we presented when we were here previously. As we can see here in the rendering, a winter evening of skating in the plaza looking south from Queen Street. Next slide, please. The skate change and mechanical building, located on Queen Street, is a functional but beautiful building. The facade treatment will take its inspiration from the Rapids theme. Clear glazing on the Queen Street facade allows the passerby to see in the skate change area. Next slide. The building has 5 public washrooms, a skate change area, a staff office, mechanical equipment, and a Zamboni garage. Next slide. Large steps between the upper and lower rooms are retaining walls, but also functional seating. The seats face the stage and will allow for tiered viewing to a performance. Next slide. Anchoring the lower room of the plaza is a stage with integrated LED screen. The stage will host community events and be a shade structure and seating area when not in use otherwise. We've moved the stage further up into the lower room of the plaza, so the space will feel more comfortable for small to medium-sized community events. This leaves the Bondar Pavilion as the natural home for larger concerts. We've changed the paving material in the lower room around the stage to a painted asphalt. The pattern we will develop will again express the Rapids theme. Next slide. There will be a variety of seating around the plaza, supporting all the major elements and events. We've added a lot more benches and movable tables and chairs because we know this will be a busy place in all seasons. Next slide. A rope climber is now in the upper room because we've had to make room for the mobile retail units near the market building and flexible event space. The rope climber will help to activate this area of the plaza in the summer, as we now have a water play feature near Queen and this climber in the middle of the site. The play area will also include a series of fully accessible play elements. Next slide. Finally, we've added quite a bit more planting when compared to the original concept design. More trees will provide shade in summer and structure in the winter. Larger planting beds also help to define key spaces in the plaza and provide a nice green backdrop to both rooms. Larger planting areas also sequester more carbon, helping to offset the carbon that was used to make this place. Next slide. In summary, the plaza design has evolved as we refine how it will be used to accommodate new property acquisitions and to remain on our budget track. The major design elements of the plaza remain, and this will be a fantastic addition to downtown Sault Ste. Marie. I'll now hand the floor back to you, Tom. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Colin. Council, just to move into some of the budgetary related items. The total cost has moved from 6.6 to 8.4 million, and this includes the property acquisition of Bay Street. And you will note the funding estimate that we have now is 2.5 million. We're very pleased that FedNor has approved a contribution of $500,000 and certainly grateful for their contribution. And NOHFC has indicated they do require confirmation from council on the city share being approved before a final decision can be made. And a letter has been included in your package with this message. On the next slide, if we can, Madison. The city has already set aside and contributed in the case of the acquired properties, 3.875 million for the Plaza project. And the current design, if approved by council, would require an additional contribution of 1.472068. And we are suggesting the funding would come from the community growth initiatives line item in future years, resulting in no impact to the levy. Next slide, please. So this slide breaks out the details of the city funding in more detail for council, and has been included in the package with some of the items to date on where we had set aside money and then where we propose the money to come from in the future. Next slide, please. In terms of fundraising, staff has suggested a revision to the fundraising target to 600,000. And we're very excited to share that the Rotary Club of Sault Ste. Marie has approved a $200,000 contribution toward the water feature and rink. So we would certainly like to thank the Rotary Club of Sault Ste. Marie for their generous donation and leadership. And we're hopeful other community organizations and citizens will also take part in this important community project. A copy of the draft fundraising options has been provided in council's package. And we will look to raise funds from both sponsorships and also private donations. And the private donations would be eligible for a tax receipt if the project is approved by council. Important to note for council and to the funders in particular that the city is responsible for any shortfalls related to the fundraising target. Next slide, please. So in terms of the next step for the project, we're seeking council approval to advance the project with a total city contribution of 5.3 million. And the additional amount required to reach this level of city contribution is the 1.4 million. With the approval, Brooke McElroy will finalize construction drawings for the project. We will release the tender in the July-August timeframe, and then we would start construction in the fall with our goal to open the plaza likely in late summer, fall 2022. Next slide, please. In summary, we're committed to the plaza. From a staff perspective, we believe the importance of this plaza has not diminished. The timing of the construction certainly will see opening in 2022, which we certainly hope aligns with relaxed COVID restrictions. And this project is an important step to helping our downtown, our businesses, and the community get together in the future. The investment in the downtown is a priority in the corporate strategic plan, the downtown strategy, and we have engaged experts in establishing a strategy for our downtown. This was one of the top recommendations from Roger Brooks, who has consulted with communities across North America and Europe, and also a project that we've received a lot of input on from the community. Next slide, please. Certainly the condition of a downtown is also a primary way that prospective residents, businesses, and students assess the health of a city and the appeal of a city. So we also think it's an important community project and economic development project that will help attract people to Sault Ste. Marie in the future. We believe city leadership in this area certainly will help foster additional investment. We've seen private sector investment in our downtown, and we believe this project will help to accelerate future investment in the downtown. And it provides a four-season destination for all ages in our community, which we believe will serve the community well in the future. So that is it for our presentation, Mr. Mayor, and we're happy to take questions.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Berman, Mr. Ver. I do have a list going here, and a number of councillors asked me to put them on the list. So I'll start with Lisa, Councillor Vezowalan.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll start with Mr. Ver. Thank you, Tom, for the presentation and the very detailed budget. What I want to ask is, in terms of the Community Growth Initiative Fund, between 2019 to the end of 2024, we're going to be utilizing, from calculations that you've given us, over 2.7 million of that fund. Two questions. What is the annual budgeted amount for that fund? And are there other initiatives that are going to be being put on the back burner because of the amount that has to go to the plaza that you are aware of?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezowalan. The annual allocation is 500,000 towards the Community Growth Initiatives line item. And from a staff perspective, we haven't allocated any other projects from this one. We were really focusing on the downtown plaza and anticipating using that funding in order to see this project through.
Okay, thank you. In terms of the fundraising, Mr. Ver, we have the 200,000 from Rotary Club, which is wonderful. They are a great organization. I know our mayor used to be a proud Rotarian himself. The other 400,000, who is going to be sort of leading that initiative, especially in terms of identifying prospects that you can put into a pipeline? Is it going to be a joint initiative with the Downtown Association? Are you allocating perhaps a specific staff member to lead that? Because fundraising, as we know, during our times right now, is down about 60%. So it is definitely not perhaps as easy as all of us having our piece of paper and saying, you know, please sign on the line and give us your 100,000 or $250 or whatever is meaningful to that person. So could you please explain the plan in terms of the fundraising?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezowalan. We are going to have staff resources allocated to the fundraising. Also, we do anticipate working with, and it was suggested at a previous BIA meeting, that the Downtown Association would also assist in our fundraising efforts. And we do recognize certainly the situation we're in related to COVID and coming out. And that's why we have included in the report that we do believe it's going to take a bit longer to achieve that goal. But we're confident that we'll be able to work with the different organizations and community members over time to realize our target.
Okay, thank you. And also just in terms of the operating budget, which you've got about 265,000, you only put in 8,300 for revenue for, you know, whether someone's renting the space, you know, things like that. Can you elaborate a little more on where you came to that number and what that would include in terms of revenue for the plaza?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen. Staff took a look at different options we've got based on experience we've had with the Roberta Bondar Pavilion, and also looking forward to events that we think can take place in the plaza. I will say, I think it is a conservative estimate. We hope and we will certainly be working hard to increase the revenue over the years, but we wanted to be conservative out of the gates with the revenue number until we get a better feel for the different events and the revenue potential there.
Okay. Does that 8,300 include us running concessions during high season of the plaza being open?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen. A portion of that money came from concession type revenue that we anticipate from events in the plaza, but also renting out space, potential for things like event beer gardens and that types of things for special events.
Okay. And what would be the contingency plan, Mr. Ver, if council approves that budget tonight and NOHFC comes back to us and does not approve the $2 million that has been under consideration with them right now?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen. Certainly at that point, we would come back to council with some recommendations for council consideration on how to advance the project. We're hopeful that we can get NOHFC support on this project. But if that were to happen, we would come back with some different recommendations at that stage.
And in terms of the facilities such as the water feature and being able to have an all-purpose surface for ice skating into winter, is there any fee for residents to use that, or is that completely open and free to the public to use?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Vezo-Allen, at this time, we are anticipating that will be free for the public to use.
Okay, thank you. My next question is probably for Mr. Berman. Hi, Colin, it's nice to see you. I was fortunate to sit in on 3 presentations that you did through the Downtown Association Board, the Accessibility Committee, and one of the public consultations. Can you please just give us an overview of who was consulted, how many people that you think that you reached, and some of the highlights from the consultation process, please?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor. We did consult quite widely during the concept design phase. We had 2 public meetings, an afternoon session and an evening session. And over 200 people attended those meetings and participated in the public survey that was posted live on the project website after that. We did summarize all of the input we received from that meeting, and it has been posted on the project website for several months now. The feedback we received during those public sessions was fantastic. It was largely positive. There were questions, as Tom summarized in his presentation, about safety and security in the plaza, which we're very aware of. Questions about how similar to some of the questions you asked tonight about how the plaza will be used, who it will be open to, and then just a lot of general enthusiasm for a project. I think the community really does recognize that this will have a big impact on downtown and just having a new, fun and exciting place to go and be with your friends and family and experience new and exciting things in the city. We also consulted directly at several junctures with the Downtown Association to ensure that they understand what is happening, the plans for the plaza, and to talk about how they can contribute to the development of the plaza and if there are any synergies with any businesses close by. So those were also very positive meetings. As well, as you mentioned, the accessibility committee, their concerns were heard loud and clear. I'm very aware as a landscape architect of ensuring that all spaces that we design are fully accessible for all ages and ability levels. So we're taking that input and making sure that we're carrying it through, and we will certainly meet with them as we progress into the details of the design. We'll meet with them again. And we also had 2 meetings with Indigenous groups. So one with the representatives from urban Indigenous groups from various associations that are operating in the city, and as well the representatives from the Garden River First Nations Reserve, which were very positive. And sorry, a third one with the Métis representatives as well too. So talking about how we can integrate indigeneity, Indigenous placemaking elements into the plaza. Our firm, a very important part of our firm's practice is we have a group called the Indigenous Design Studio, where we have Indigenous designers on staff. They are participating in that process with us, and we're now going to get into some of the details as we progress through the design about how to express some of the ideas that we heard from them in those meetings.
Great. Thank you so much, Colin. I really appreciate it. From the public consultations, do you have an estimate as to how many people participated, and did you do any demographics as far as age or their postal code or things like that, so that we know if it was citywide or if it was mainly people that reside and or have businesses in the downtown area?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we opted to, during the public survey, so we received input in 2 ways during the 2 public meetings. First, there was an open question and answer period during the meetings, and then we had a public survey. The public survey, we opted not to collect any demographic data. We opted to just to keep the survey as simple as possible so that it was easy for people to fill out and participate in. We heard from around 200 people during that consultation session. And I should add, to answer your first question, through all the stakeholder meetings, I would say we've reached around 300 people directly on the online surveys, which is good for a public process at the concept stage. We'll want to release more information as we come. I mean, more information will be released as part of this council presentation and process, and I expect we'll get some more questions that will start to ignite some interest again in the community.
Great. Thanks very much, Colin. I appreciate it. Just in closing, I do support this project. I think a vibrant downtown is a really huge attractor, especially in terms of newcomers, as well as providing access and free activities for all of our age groups. My only comment to you, Mr. Rivera, would be that if the NOHFC funding does not come through, then I think we need to re-examine this project in terms of how we can scale it back if we're not getting that, that full amount from NOHFC. But thanks, Tom, and thanks, Colin, for your presentation and all the work that you've done so far. Nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Vazoan. I'm going to have to stop here, though. We'll pick up back here once we're done planning. It is 5:32 by my count, and our planning agenda starts at 5:30. So, Madam Clerk, if we can go to planning, unless, Mr. Berman, do you have a limit on your time? So if
I can come back. Yeah.
Yeah, yep. You're fine. So, Mr. Vera, you can get hold of Mr. Berman.
I can. Yes. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so we're going to have to jump to the planning agenda because that's scheduled to start at 5:30. And we do have a number of applications on it tonight and a number of people present to speak to those applications. So, Madam Clerk, if you could bring us to planning, and then we'll circle back to the plaza after we're done our planning agenda.
Yeah, I would just point out there is someone in the waiting room who isn't registered, and I understand it's Mary Rogers. If you're watching the broadcast, if you could call 705-759-5392 to identify yourself in order to be admitted to the meeting. So under agenda item 7.7.1, A421Z, 2176 Queen Street East, Rousseau Masonry and Construction Limited. The applicant and the applicant's solicitor are on the line. Mr. McConnell is not available, but Mr. Tenazzo is in the meeting.
Okay, so Mr. Tenazzo, are you going to be giving us a précis of this application?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The subject property, it's on the north side of Queen Street East, just west of Walta Storage and across the street from the wastewater treatment plant. The applicant seeking council's approval to permit a personal storage facility in addition to the uses permitted under the current general commercial zoning. The applicant is also seeking a number of amendments to the site-specific zoning on the property. The planning director's recommendation is to approve the application subject to a number of conditions, including increasing the required setback from the west lot line from 3 to 8 meters. I should note that the existing vegetated area between the west lot line and the cleared area needs to be maintained. And I think there's been a lot of questions and concerns that have been coming in from neighbors. This needs to be maintained as per previous approvals and existing regulations that are outlined in zoning bylaw 2017-16. There has been some clearing that occurred on site as recent as this afternoon. This was done by a third-party contractor who actually did inadvertently remove some vegetation across the north lot line. However, this doesn't appear to impact the vegetated area along the west lot line, which there was some scrub removal, if you want to call it that. There was some thin vegetation that was quite sparse that was removed from the west side, but that was sort of east of or beyond the main bush line, if you want to call it that. Therefore, the main forested area, as far as we're concerned, has not been impacted and will be required to be maintained going forward. I do note that Mr. Spatafora is in attendance to speak on behalf of this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Canazzo. Mr. Spatafora, did you want to take an opportunity to speak to the application?
Yes, thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. Sitting here in my boardroom, I wanted to mention if there are any questions directly for Mr. Dave Rucho. He's the lead proponent on this application. I think at the end of the day, Mr. Tenazzo's provided the summary, and I know the council has the planning report before them. What I did want to do is underline some of the key aspects of this development. And basically, I think if we keep in mind that just to the southeast of this parcel of property, there is an existing storage location, Valtra, that's there. Essentially, the intent is to keep essentially the similar type of development in that area. Of course, trying to be respectful of some of the vegetation that is there, as Mr. Tenazzo has mentioned. And I think that there is an intention on the part of Rucho Masonry, who I think everybody around the table is quite familiar with the kind of work that they do, that they are intending to be respectful of the neighborhood, the surrounding areas. And of course, because of the planning recommendation that this would be under site plan control, they will work hand in hand, not only with city planning, but also the building division at the city. So there will be an opportunity to ensure that some of those concerns that have been raised through the process will be monitored and ensure that things are done in an appropriate fashion. But I think I'll stop there, and I think it'll be more in terms of the kinds of questions that may come up, Mr. Mayor. I'll leave it there.
Okay. We do have some questions, but we do, Madam Clerk, do we have anybody registered? I know we have people registered to speak in opposition to some of the matters tonight. Do you have anybody registered to speak in opposition to this specific matter?
No, we do not.
Okay, so we'll take some questions then. Councilor Christian, I saw your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Tenazzo, if I might. Peter, I just want to be clear because I've traveled around this property a couple of times. Just to be clear, when you're looking at the property in question, you see it from Queen Street, and beyond it, just to the north of it, you see a large berm. Just to be clear, that's a separate project, correct? That's a Seldan project beyond the northern edge of this the property in question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, that's correct. So the berm roughly denotes what the rear lot line of the subject property would be. And then north of that is a residential development, another phase of the Denwood subdivision that is being done by Seldan as we speak.
Okay. And to the best of your knowledge, there has been no tree removal or any significant tree removal on the Ruscio the property, the application tonight?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Christian, I think there's been some tree removal along the north lot line, likely inside of the Ruscio property. There's definitely been some tree removal to the east, along the east lot line, and that was to facilitate the walkway, the pedestrian walkway between Queen Street and Denwood. Then I think there's been some grading and probably a thinning of some sparse vegetation or removal of some sort of one-off trees and little shrubs that existed that were beyond that main bush line along the west portion of the property.
Okay. And just one final question then. As I look at it today, there clearly is a bush area to the west, on the west side of this property. And to be clear, that bush area is to remain in place as this property is developed, providing that buffer.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Council, anybody else with questions of the applicant or planning on this matter? Seeing none, confirm we have nobody registered to speak against the matter. We can have a vote on it. Madam Clerk. You
I
already
have a
read
motion
this.
by,
Go
I
ahead.
have not read it yet.
Okay.
I have a motion by Councillors Bruni and Hilsinger, resolved that the report of the planner dated May 10, 2021, concerning rezoning application A421Z be received, and that Council rezone 2176 Queen Street East from general commercial zone with special exception 162 to general commercial zone with an amended special exception to block A therein only, in addition to those uses permitted in a C4 zone, save for accommodation services, daycare facilities, nursing and residential care facilities, residential dwellings on the subject property. Permit a personal storage facility without the requirement that such facility be in association with a motor vehicle sales and parts dealer. Establish any building shall be set back a minimum of 8 meters from the west lot line and 10 meters from the rear lot line. Permit a visually solid fence as a component that may be used to visually screen outdoor storage areas, and prohibit any automobiles, boats, or recreational vehicles that are wrecked, dismantled, or inoperative, and that the legal department be requested to prepare the necessary bylaws to effect the same.
All in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Rutherford. Thank your client for the development. Happy to see it move ahead, and we look forward to it.
Thank you.
Clerk, that brings us to 7.7.2.
I have a few votes that didn't come in. I'm assuming that nobody voted against the motion.
It didn't appear to me that anybody did.
Agenda item 7.7.2, A721Z, is a proposed zoning amendment for outdoor seasonal patios. And we do have one individual who is registered to speak against it. Mr. Tenazzo is on the call to speak to the amendment.
Okay, Mr. Tenazzo, 7.7.2, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the clerk noted, this application relates to seasonal patios in association with restaurants and bars. There were a number of these seasonal patios that were established last summer utilizing temporary regulations at the time. And essentially this application seeks to include these regulations on a permanent basis, more specifically to define seasonal patios as those that operate less than 200 days per year, allow them to operate without requiring any additional parking, allow them to occupy up to 25% of a required parking area, as long as that area or the patio itself does not abut a residentially zoned property. And then finally, to require that, required barrier-free parking spaces cannot be utilized for the patio. So they must be maintained. The planning director's recommendation is to approve this application. Thank you.
Okay, so we have no one else that is speaking in favor of the application, as I understand it, Madam Clerk, but we do have somebody registered to speak in opposition to this. Mr. Noah Edwards.
That is correct.
Is he Mr. Edwards? Oh, there you go. Okay, Mr. Edwards, you wanted to speak to this application?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just first note that I don't own a restaurant or work at one, so I'm mainly just interested in this application as it's about parking minimums, and that's something I think that we don't really need, in my opinion. Council might think differently, but that's fine. My main question was who is best to determine parking minimums, the municipality or the business owner? And of course, I believe that the municipality has no part in requiring those. So at first, about parking minimums, to me, they seem just like arbitrary numbers in the zoning bylaw. They set out the worst case scenario and they ensure that there's space for snow storage. And of course, that these patios are going to be in the summertime and there is no need for snow storage. I talked about accessible parking, but I'm glad that Mr. McConnell added that in there to ensure that they're protected, because that wasn't in there at first. So it's good to see that's on there. So thank you to them for adding that. That's very important to ensure those spaces are available for those who need it. I did look at some other cities, 23 to be exact, probably some more, but none of them had them on their website. I found that 18 of them did not have strict parking limits for their patios. These are all lots of more temporary bylaws, but I will note that the City of London just recently passed a permanent amendment similar to what we're doing, but they don't have any strict parking minimums. Their planners had stated that they wanted to provide greater flexibility to businesses to choose if additional patio capacity was better for them than more parking spaces. And that was good for areas with lots of active transportation or more dense urban areas that the City of London may have. And also, if you kind of look at the appendix, a lot of the larger cities, like even like the City of Toronto and things like that, with lots more parking challenges, did not have any restrictions on parking. So my question is, why is the SU doing that? It's when we have plenty of parking available in the city, and there's no need for that. We have plenty of parking on the street and around and businesses, so I don't really see it as a big concern for the city. I know probably one of the big concerns would be like kind of spillover parking, where people are parking in other places and things like that. That's a valid concern, but of course the city can pass bylaws all they want to prohibit parking, and businesses can take it and tow vehicles who are not parking to go to their business. So overall, the amendments in my report that I had sent beforehand, if someone would like to support it, if they'd like to, that's there. But overall, I don't think the municipality should be the one to determine the parking minimums with the arbitrary numbers. So hopefully we can maybe remove that at some point in the parking minimums to join some other progressive cities in North America and most other European cities. So thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for your input, Mr. Edwards. So Council, do we have any questions of planning staff on this application? Councilor Dufour.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I was just wondering if Mr. Tanazzo could speak for planning on why we do require parking minimums for the patios. I know that traditionally that's been a part of our planning department's mandate to ensure that enforcement isn't overburdened. But I guess I would just ask Mr. Tanazzo to remember that we do have a NORPRO third-party parking enforcement bylaw in place now, and some of these traditional methods for planning may not be as applicable. So if you could just speak to that, that'd be great.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour, and first and foremost, a thank you to Mr. Edwards. I thought this was very well written, very well laid out. And he did point out something that was missing from the report, and that we didn't originally have a requirement that barrier-free spaces not be impacted by this. So thank you to Mr. Edwards for that. It's an interesting concept, and yeah, we recognize that certainly bigger cities, European cities, may not necessarily have parking requirements. But I would suggest that it is the municipality's responsibility to set out minimum parking standards, because parking, it's one of those things that everybody kind of has to pay their fair share of parking. So if you say to a business, you know, you don't need parking, or they decide that they don't need parking because everybody can park on the road, then maybe you're making it the neighborhood's problem or an abutting business's problem. So you're just kind of pushing that issue onto somebody else. And then, yes, I get it. We could pass a bylaw that says no parking on the road. But if we pass that bylaw, no parking on the road, then A, somebody has to enforce it, and B, that could impact residents and businesses that are utilizing that on-road parking in a manner consistent with how on-road parking should be. So I think I understand that in a perfect world where Mr. Edwards is going, that's certainly something worth striving to. And definitely in our downtown, where we have reduced parking standards and we allow parking within 300 meters of a use, essentially in some cases in the downtown, or in a lot of cases, we don't have a parking requirement. So in our downtown, certainly we've we've approached it that way, and there are city lots and there's lots of multiple trips and everything is well serviced by public transit and you can walk from place to place. Ultimately, it works in the downtown, but I don't know if as a community we're ready to go there beyond the downtown at this point. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Tenazzo. Would it be accurate to say that the planning department is happy to work with any business that does see this as a barrier to find an alternative solution, if in fact that case ever arose?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour, absolutely. And you'll note in the report that, we worked through this last year. And up to this point, we haven't had any concerns raised by local businesses or neighbors that the 25% parking requirement or utilizing only 25% of the parking area was an issue for businesses or neighbors.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr. Tenazzo. Appreciate the information.
Thank you. Councillor Dufour, any other councillors speak to this matter? Seeing none, we've had city staff speak to it. We've had Mr. Edwards speak to it. We have nobody else registered to speak to it. Madam Clerk, you could read the resolution, please.
The motion by Councillors Nero and Hilsinger. Resolved that the report of the Planning Director dated May 10, 2021 concerning zoning amendment A721Z outdoor seasonal patios be received and that Council amends the zoning bylaw as follows. 1, seasonal outdoor patios are defined as not intended for year-round operation and which operate less than 200 days each year. 2, seasonal outdoor patios do not require any additional parking. 3, up to 25% of other required parking may be used for a seasonal outdoor patio, provided that it does not abut a residentially zoned property. All required barrier-free parking spaces must be maintained, and that the legal department be requested to prepare the necessary bylaw to effect the same.
All in favor? Application is approved. Do you have all the votes, Madam Clerk? Okay.
Agenda item 7.7.3, A821ZOP and 57T21503 is 249 Old Garden River Road and 260 Mill Creek Drive, Fremlin. There was correspondence received late in the day Friday that's been forwarded to Council, and I would point out that there were 3 pieces of correspondence that were received after 4 o'clock this afternoon that have been also forwarded. And of course, Mr. Tenazzo was in the call to speak to the application, as well as the applicant, his engineer, and his solicitor, and we have 2 people registered to speak against the application.
Okay, so Mr. Tenazzo, we're going to start with you. If you can give us a summary of the application, and then we'll move to the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The subject properties are north of or behind St. Mary's College. The subject properties have frontage on Old Garden River Road and access to the Mill Creek subdivision. The applicant seeking a series of approvals to facilitate the construction of a 69-unit residential subdivision consisting of single and semi-detached dwellings. With no affordable units, the planning director's recommendation is to approve this application subject to a number of conditions. And John McDonald is here to speak to council on behalf of the application. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to have to find Mr. McDonald. Mr. McDonald, welcome to council. Are you speaking on behalf of the applicant in this application? Mr. McDonald, we can't hear you, so you don't have a mute symbol, but you might have to turn something on your end. Still can't hear you, sir.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Sorry about that, everybody. I apologize. Thank you very much. Yes, Mr. Mayor, I am here tonight to speak on behalf of the applicant. With me, I also have Mr. Kevin Jarvis. He is our land use planner. He is also here to handle any land use matters. In general, we thank city staff for the very comprehensive report. It's very well written and accurate. This project has been a while in the making in terms of completing the necessary studies in accordance with the Planning Act. And I believe we've prepared and compiled a comprehensive report and detailed listing of requirements. And essentially, I'm here to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, is there anybody else that's present to speak on behalf of the application? Okay, before
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
My apologies, Mr. Mayor and the members of council. This is Kevin Jarvis. I'm a senior planner with Tulloch Engineering. I just wanted to provide a very brief overview of my planning opinion with regard to this application. Certainly, we prepared a planning justification report as part of the complete application package for this application. And certainly through that planning justification report, our own analysis and opinion would agree with Mr. Tenazzo's own report and the city's report, in that the official plan amendment, the rezoning application, and certainly the draft plan of subdivision is consistent with the 2020 provincial policy statement and is conforms to and or does not conflict with the growth plan for Northern Ontario, and of course your own official plan documents. I am here to answer any questions that perhaps Mr. Tenazzo would prefer that the applicant's agent or planner answer. But I just wanted to thank yourself and of course council for the time tonight and the consideration of this exciting development. Thank you.
Okay, so Madam Clerk, what we'll do is we'll start with the questions that council might have of staff or the applicant, and then we'll go from there. Council, do we have any questions on this application? Councillor Hilsinger, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is in my ward, and I'm very familiar with the area. I'm hoping that we've received a number of letters from residents who have expressed various different concerns, and to whomever would be best suited to speak to them, Mr. Tenazzo initially, and then from there. But the main things I'm hearing are there's concern about drainage, there's concern about parkland and green space. There's concern about what traffic will be created in the area. And really right now while there is a hub trail on the west side of Old Garden River Road, there is not a lot of pedestrian infrastructure in this area. There has been a marked number of young people in particular using this space, walking to and from school, with a trail on one side and a street shoulder technically on the other. So, how I've read the report, but, can you speak more to how these issues would be addressed? And then the final thing is there are a number of people concerned about the issues during the construction time, and dust and traffic, noise, etc. So, Mr. Tenazzo, I'll leave that to you to get started on, please.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hilsinger. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hilsinger. Yeah, I think you've summarized essentially what the bulk of the concerns have been. I have a list here: drainage, traffic, parkland, and then we've heard a fair number of concerns about buffering between rear lot lines. So I can address a couple of these, and then I'll likely have, I believe Carl Ramil is on the line, who's our traffic engineer. And I think between the engineers, they can address the traffic and the drainage concerns. I'll start with parkland. Now, the parkland is about half of what's required. We've looked at it, our park staff has looked at it, and we don't have concerns with the size. We actually feel that with a combination of parkland and cash in lieu of parkland, that actually has a significant benefit for us. I also note that we currently don't count, when you look at open space per se, which isn't not necessarily accessible space, but at least open green space. Some places would look at sort of the storm retention pond as that as well. We don't, but ultimately this is the applicant is proposing a smaller than 5% park space, but we feel that it is appropriate and adequate for this subdivision, not to mention that you've got Strathclair Farms and Strathclair Park in relative close proximity to the east, and then you've got Eric Nysted Park to the northwest. The other concern that we heard that was sort of land use planning related was sort of buffering between rear lot lines. And I think this may come up from the neighbors or one of the neighbors a little later. And essentially the answer to that, notwithstanding the drainage works that need to happen in order to drain this subdivision, as well as the area to the northwest, which is currently draining over here, you have to go in and do some grading to make that work. We generally wouldn't require or have a buffering requirement between, where you've got low density residential abutting low density residential. So you've basically got single detached lots abutting single detached lots on Mill Creek and Old Garden River Road, and then a little bit of sort of, again, what we would call low density development, semis abutting singles. That's not something that we would provide a buffer between. So I think that sort of, I think, generally answers some of the concerns I've heard. In terms of the traffic and the drainage concerns, I would defer to either Mr. McDonald or Mr. Ramil on those comments.
Thank you, Peter. I'm assuming that was the segue for me to speak with respect to the drainage. As many of you are very likely aware, along with city staff, is during the detailed design process or during the design process and the provisions of the subdivision agreement that we would enter into, the drainage is a primary aspect of which has to be designed and properly controlled. We had the opportunity to meet with a resident last week with respect to this concern. I'm pleased to say that we were successful in alleviating their concerns on how we approach this. Generally speaking, when we talk drainage, there's two systems in which we have to account for as engineers and designers and planners. The first being what we term the major system. The second was what we term the minor system. The minor system is what we commonly think of as, in terms of storm drainage, as the catch basin and the pipe network system. Barring that, as we all know, there is sometimes extreme weather events. So we actually control what we call the major system, which is the overland flow path. And we design the lot grading and any rear yard drainage, any auxiliary drainage to handle the major events. So that there is no effect or no damage to private property in that case. In terms of, sorry?
No, sir, I thought you were done, Mr. McDonald, and actually Mr. Tenaza was going to Mr. Ramil on traffic, but that's no problem. You can finish up and then we'll go to Mr. Ramil.
Mr. Ramil, I divest to him.
Just on the drainage, I would also add through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hilsinger, that our comments from the engineering division were that all drainage will be done as per the city's stormwater management guidelines, which we follow, which Tulloch is well versed in. With respect to traffic, through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Hilsinger, engineering division is satisfied with I believe it's JD Northcott traffic impact statement that was provided. I think it approximately identified 50 or so AM peak hour trips and as well as in the PM, and without any significant operational or congestion issues through the local road network that would be accessed by the new development.
Okay, Councillor Hilsinger, does that the combination of that answer your questions?
Not entirely. There was no comment about the pedestrian challenges in the area. And then I did have a question about the construction or during the time of the construction. And while I'm just here, I want to go back to what Mr. Tenazo said about the parkland. Can you just briefly help me understand cash in lieu of and how this is somehow better than actually, requiring a developer to develop to the standard that we've set?
For you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hilsinger. So the Planning Act establishes the maximums in this instance, the maximum amount or how we collect parkland as it relates to development. And traditionally, Sault Ste. Marie has collected parkland when there's subdivisions. And then when we're looking at that, we make a decision, is it better to get the parkland or cash in lieu of or a combination thereof? And the Planning Act basically says that your minimum standard is you can collect 5% parkland, that being not more than 5% of the total area that's being developed, or 5% cash in lieu of, or a combination thereof. So in this case, what we're getting is we're getting a little bit of a smaller park, and then the rest of the park space is being made up by a cash payment to the city. That's how it works.
Okay.
Okay, so there were two other issues that Councilor Hilsinger wanted to address. One was the pedestrian issues that relate to the area, and the third issue relates to, I think, the construction process and how the neighbors' concerns can be mitigated during that process. So, Mr. Tenazzo, I'm going to have you direct whomever you think would be best to answer those questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start with construction only because I've had conversations with the developer and the developer's consultant, as well as a couple of the neighbors. So essentially, the way that it's been described is the developer has stated that the semi-detached dwellings west of Smill Boulevard will be phase 1. The single detached east of Smill will be phase 2 towards Mill Creek and Mill Stream. However, in order to accomplish phase 1, they need to put a sewer pipe all the way over towards Mill Stream. And what that's going to require is for a fairly short period of time, and I believe Mr. McDonald can confirm how long, the way that the construction works for that is that they will dig the trench going east to west, and the trucks will get loaded and go west and up Smill Boulevard, and then the trucks bringing in the new material will come in from behind through the Mill Creek subdivision. This is relatively short term, and then ultimately the developer has suggested that they will ensure that once this phase of the project is complete, that being they've laid that sewer pipe, that all construction traffic will take the more direct and convenient route, which is through Smill Boulevard. Unfortunately, construction is just it's a temporary, unfortunate reality that we have to deal with every development. We try our best to mitigate the best that we can, but ultimately, where there's development, there's construction traffic. Thank you.
And on the pedestrian point, Mr. Tenazzo?
On the pedestrian point, I will, Mr. Ramil, please.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Hilsinger. I guess ideally, we would have a designated sidewalk or multi-use trail on any road where pedestrians choose to walk. That's not the case on our Class B roads. What we do in that case is enhance the paved shoulder width, which we've done on Old Garden River Road. As you know, that Old Garden River Road from second line to Terrence is actually the hub trail and we've widened the walking platform by expanding the paved shoulder, and that's what we have on Old Garden River Road. Similarly, there was some concerns I saw about the traffic and pedestrian access on Terrence. I guess same issue. Terrence is a Class B road with a little bit wider paved shoulders. Terrence is a really good candidate for a conversion to Class A with sidewalk, and it's been well looked at in recent years from a traffic calming perspective. But we would need to have a designated sidewalk, which would be planned for in future capital programs. Could be considered.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Okay, Councilor Gardy.
Not any longer. Question was answered. Thanks.
Council, do we have any additional questions on this matter? I don't see any. Madam Clerk, I do believe we have somebody registered to speak in opposition to the matter. Is that correct?
We have two individuals, both of whom are on the call, Roseanne Alaga and Noah Edwards.
Okay, so we will start with Roseanne. I can see you there, Roseanne. Welcome to council. You're free to share your perspective. Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank you for allowing me to at least speak and have my say. I don't think I'm going to get very far. I live in Toronto, and unfortunately, I didn't get any of this information in the mail. I just got one sheet of paper in the mail, and it didn't come until the mid of last week. I did call and I spoke to Mr. Tenazzo, and I want to thank him very much for taking the time to speak with me. I did send a letter in I didn't even see that 65-page report, so I'm sorry. I haven't read that, but I understand that, and I still support Sault Ste. Marie, even though I live in Toronto. My car insurance, house insurance, everything is still given to the local people, business people in Sault Ste. Marie. That being said, I have one big, huge concern. My father, Mr. Carmen Flammy, I'm sure some of you may be familiar with that name, bought land and built a home on 315 Old Garden River Road. That, I believe, according to the diagram, is going to back up into the backyards of your new proposed subdivision, which is lovely, wonderful. But I have over an acre of land. My neighbors on each side have acreages of land, and so on down that line. We were hoping that someday there would be a road going through that back parcel of land where the park is or something, have parks on either side or forest or whatever, but at least a road so we can sever and develop those lands. The way that this has been designed, you're locking us in. And I spoke to Mr. Tanazo and he said, well, your entry point would be from Old Garden River Road. That's fine. But for us to have and to go with the city bylaws and being so many feet from here and from there for the road and the ditches and all that, we'd have to tear someone's house down. And I really think it's unfair, and I really think it's so unfortunate that I didn't get the information sooner, that I didn't get to spend any time to speak with Daniel Fremlin. I work for developers in Toronto. I manage one of the highest end of condominiums in Toronto. And there's so much more that could have been done, so much more potential for even Sault Ste. Marie and all of that whole area. And it's just like you just have focused on one small component and forgotten about the other residents who have lived there, supported Sault Ste. Marie, and paid taxes all their lives. My dad died when he was 85. He lived there for most of his life, paid taxes. I still pay taxes, and we're not even considered. And that really, really is upsetting to me. And I'm all about business and the bottom line. But I think given the opportunity that if people reached out to us a lot sooner, that a lot more and something more feasible and a lot better could have been done. I don't agree if this is going to go through. I do not agree that you destroy the parkland at all. That is a parkland, and I'm surprised that the city would even consider it. I'm sorry, but I'm passionate about this. I feel that I've held on to that house for my father's memory, yes, but also for the benefit of my children and my grandchildren down the road. And you've taken that away from me, not only me, but from the other neighbors. And I have spoken to some of them. And that to me is unfair. I want to thank you for letting me speak my mind.
Thank you for your representations. Mr. Edwards, we will go to you now.
Hello again, Council. Thank you for letting me speak again about this. I live on Mill Creek Drive, so I have a number of things I want to speak about, and I think thank you to Council Hilsinger for kind of bringing them up at first. That was great to kind of hear some responses, though. It's great to hear that first. So overall, I do think it's a good space to develop. No problem with the amendment or the rezoning of the property because it is close to the retail, Walmart, Aurora's River, and transit, the schools, the parks, and active transportation. My concerns mainly revolve around the design of the neighborhood and like our creek valley and the trees and things like that. So there is the images that I have on the written report that kind of accompany this as well. So first of all, like the drainage in Creek Valley, like it seems to me that it is going to be dealt with, but and I'm still a bit wary about it because there still is we haven't been provided with a design of said they want to, there's currently a creek and stream valley behind the homes along Mill Creek Drive and Oak River Road, as you see in the pictures. That provides a lot of the water flow. It does carry a large amount of water, and the gravel road that they have between where the road between Mill Creek and Jack Roddick is right now, that was actually washed out one year because of the amount of water that runs through that. So there is a lot of water, and I think that has to be kept in mind. And the official plan, like I have written in there, and D3 does say that all natural features should be encouraged to be maintained, and this development is going to be basically almost filling that in and having the valley be filled in and have a shallow swale, which is all I've heard of about the swale is it's going to be shallow, and that's all. The valley right now would serve a great buffer between the homes, even though, as Mr. Tanazo said, that you don't really need a buffer. Well, it still is nice to have some sort of buffer between our home and the other one for privacy, and it also would help the developer as it'd be a natural feature to add some aesthetic to the neighborhood as well. The stream isn't even mentioned in any of the reports about like the stormwater management. It's not written in there, which I guess it might not have to be written in there, but it wasn't mentioned, which I found concerning at first. So that's where my main concern about that was from. And I do think that it should be maintained as much as possible. And the swale should be somewhat nice and landscaped. So there is some privacy between our homes and the ones behind us. And just about going off that, about the various views, like right now we back onto the forest and trees. So it's a nice landscape that kind of buffers from the school property and second line across the school property as well. So I would appreciate if, of course, like some high degree of landscape between our houses and the other homes with some trees and stuff like that to make sure that we don't have to look in their backyard and they don't have to look in ours, obviously. And about the trees, there are so many trees on this property that will be cut down as a result of it. And I had asked the planners about how many trees would be required to be planted because it is in the subject agreement and the subdivision agreement conditions. And they said only 1 tree per lot, which to me seems like very few trees at all to be planted. And that's, and I was looking in the official plan as well, and it does speak about the urban forest concept, which I think should be highly encouraged in this development as they are going to be cutting down a large amount of trees, especially out towards Oak River Road. And I feel like the aesthetic of that would also help the development as well for the prices of the homes. I feel like that'd be great. And there are so many great benefits to the trees. I get into more in the written comments. I won't talk about it too much here. And of course, it would be beneficial to the developers. Trees should be in both the front and rear yards and the trees along the property lines to provide that privacy and a little bit of delineation between the two properties. I had spoken a bit about traffic calming because Jack Roddick Road is going to be quite straight, and just to kind of save costs in the future, that the developer should be required to integrate that in their road because of course people will speed on it from Mill Creek. I know because I live on Mill Creek. To reduce costs in the city, they should be required to kind of integrate those measures in there. And I would suggest like chicanes or things like that, not any speed humps, but maybe just some curb extensions and stuff like that, or some trees in the boulevard. And I talked about the example of Foxborough, which, as you heard from last time back in March about the speed. And if you look at Foxborough right now, it's basically a speedway and there's no trees on either side. So there's no perception that there's any obstacles. So people can just drive 60 kilometers an hour through Foxborough. And I would expect this to be the same in this road as well. So I would propose adding that just to make sure that the people in that neighborhood are happy with that. And about the walkway between the school and the road, I'm happy that that is there, but it's not written in there that there is that it has to be paved. So I would hope that that would be added in the conditions because it's not specified specifically like it was in the agreement with the Fox Road subdivision in March that it has to be paved, which I think it should be paved. It also doesn't specify about the sidewalks on the north side of the street, but this walkway be on the south side. So there's nothing saying that there has to be some sort of pedestrian treatment there with some curb cuts or whatever to allow people to cross, because that'd be useful for kids. I'm going to the high school, and also lots of residents will use the track at St. Mary's for that feature as well, which is great. And then moving to what Councillor Hilsinger said about the pedestrian safety on Oak River Road. There is currently no safe way for anyone to cross the street to get to the bus shelter on the west side of Oak River Road, Karen Torres Public School, Eric Nidestead Park beside Karen Torres, or the Hub Trail Sewer Hospital. The justification report talks about how kids could walk to school, and I'm going to say that won't happen at all because there's no way for them to cross the street. All the kids in Mill Creek get bused because Old River Road is such a hazard. And then in this development, there would be no way for kids to walk to school safely. They would still be bused. And there needs to be some sort of crossing there for people to cross it. And even the developer said in their response to the article about that the semis would be for seniors. Well, how are seniors going to cross the road? So we have children and seniors who need to cross the road. Old River Road has a high vehicle speeds. It's 50 kilometers an hour, but people go 60, 70 kilometers an hour. There's no sidewalks, as mentioned earlier. Only the wide shoulders, there's nothing protected. I did note that council can require developers to contribute to cost of infrastructure improvements that are necessary to provide safe pedestrian access, and that's in TR 8.1. And I would definitely suggest that council require the developer to pay a portion of a cost for a pedestrian crossover at that location, so the new residents will have safe access to those amenities I talked about earlier. And then just moving on to the end, like, and overall, like, on paper, it seems like a great development. I think it'd be a great addition to the area, but I just think that things need to be done well, and that there needs to be a high degree of landscaping to kind of replace the trees that were cut down. And I would just propose that I kind of looked at the draft approval, and I kind of amended it myself. So I'll just kind of read off that. Like, in condition 7, adding after the word construct a 3-meter wide asphalt paved. So it's because it doesn't specifically state in condition 7 that the pathway should be paved. At the end of condition 9, which talks about the trees, it does not say how many trees. So I think at the end it should add something about how many trees. I would suggest around 5 trees per lot. So you have a couple in the back, couple in the front. That's what I would suggest to add to there. And then some new conditions. I have 17, the developer constructs pedestrian crossing treatments between the sidewalk and the pedestrian walkway. Number 18, that the developer integrates traffic calming measures along Jack Roderick Drive between Mill Creek and whatever the boulevard name is. And then finally, number 19, that they pay a fee to the city with some sort. Pedestrian crossings around $50,000 to $75,000. They pay some sort of fee to pay for that construction of the crossover at a future date. That's what I have. Thank you, council, for considering that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Noah, for your input and your representations, and for your participation tonight. So council, you've heard from the applicants. You've heard from 2 parties that registered to speak to the application. And I've taken questions. Do I have any additional questions from councilors? I see none, so we can call a vote on the application, Madam Clerk.
I'm afraid I've lost the seconder, as Councillor Shoemaker has a conflict. So can I get a seconder?
So we'll have Councillor Scott as seconder. Thank you, Councillor Scott.
So a motion by Councillors Bruni and Scott, resolved that the report of the senior planner dated May 10, 2021 concerning rezoning and official plan amendment application A821ZOP and draft plan of subdivision application 57T 21-503 be received, and that council approve the application in the following manner. 1, that council approve official plan amendment 232 by way of a map change to redesignate the subject properties from institutional to residential on land use Schedule C. Furthermore, that council approve a notwithstanding clause to policy HO.6 to waive the requirement that at least 30% of all dwelling units be affordable. Number 2, that council approve the draft plan of subdivision dated January 18, 2021, subject to the conditions to draft approval attached as Appendix A. Number 3, that council rezones the subject properties in the following manner as shown on the attached draft plan dated January 18, 2021. A, that lots 38 to 54 be rezoned from institutional zone to low density residential zone. B, that block 56 be rezoned from institutional zone to parks and recreation zone. And C, that lots 1 to 37 and blocks 57 and 58 be rezoned from institutional zone to single detached residential zone. And that the legal department be requested to prepare the necessary bylaws to effect the same.
Hey, council, all in favor? The application is approved. So did you cast, Madam Clerk, do you have all the votes casted on e-scribe?
Councillor Gardy, did you vote in the affirmative? And Councillor Bruni?
I did vote, but I didn't get it on my screen.
Did you vote in the affirmative, Councillor
I
Bruni?
voted affirmative with my hand. Yes, I did.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Council, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Good luck with the development.
Thank you all and good
The
night.
agenda item 7.7.4, A921 ZOP 885 Second Line East, Rusho Developments Incorporated. And we have the applicant and his solicitor included in the meeting, and Mr. Tenazzo to speak to the report.
Mr. Spatafora, you're back. So we'll start with Mr. Tenazzo, Mr. Spatafora, then we'll move to you. Mr. Tenazzo, can you give us a brief update or summary of this application, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The subject property it's located on the south side of Second Line East, and it abuts an existing storage facility to the east. The applicants are seeking council's approval to permit a personal storage and warehouse facility on the property. The planning director's recommendation is to approve. Thank you.
Mr. Spatafora, did you want to speak, an opportunity to speak to the application?
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to mention that Mr. Rusho, Joe Rusho this time, is here sitting with me and in our board office. If there's any questions for council, I think that the report stands for and speaks for itself. So I won't add any color to it at this point.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody registered to speak in opposition to this application or to speak additionally to this application?
No, we do not.
Okay. So council, do you have any questions about this application for either the applicant or city staff? I see none. So Madam Clerk, if you could read the resolution, we'll vote on the application.
The motion by councillors Nero and Hilsinger resolved that the report of the planner dated May 10, 2021 concerning rezoning and official plan amendment application A921 ZOP be received, and that council approve official plan amendment 233 to permit industrial uses on the subject property. Further, that council rezone 885 Second Line East from rural area zone to light industrial zone, and that the subject property be deemed subject to site plan control as per section 41 of the Planning Act, and that the legal department be requested to prepare the necessary bylaws to effect the same.
Okay, council, all in favor? Motion is carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Spatafora. Okay, Madam Clerk, that brings us back to 7.3.1. And yeah. So we need Mr. Vera back and Mr. Berman back. I appreciate, Mr. Berman, your patience. If we weren't statutorily required to start scheduled, I would have kind of carried through. Councillor Bezual, when we left off, I was with you. Are you finished your questioning and comments?
I'm all done. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, so I do have a list going here. Councillor Bruni, you were second on it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to pull the agenda here. So to is Mr. Vera on? Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. To Mr. Vera, regarding the revised plaza design, why wouldn't the utilities work not be included? And I know we talked about the service infrastructure for mobile retail units. So I guess my question is, why wasn't that in the cost factor of the project?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, the initial estimate we got was conducted by a different planning firm and was more of a conceptual design. As we got into the actual design of the plaza with Brooke McElroy and finalized the features and kind of how it was going to be laid out in the plaza, that's when PUC was engaged and why those utility costs were then finalized with the utility. Related to the mobile retail units, when we started the plaza project, those units weren't actually approved by council, or that project wasn't in front of council. But when we looked at the feedback, certainly from the public in terms of the desires for the plaza and marrying that with the approval of council for the mobile retail units, that's when we saw the opportunity while we're putting in infrastructure and building that plaza, it would make sense to have the servicing there, the electrical and the water and related servicing for those units, which will benefit, we believe, the entire plaza project.
Thank you very much. And my next question, Mr. Vera, is you mentioned to Councillor Vezo-Allen that if you don't receive the government funding, a scale back version would come back. So I guess my question to you is, why didn't you bring back a scale back version back to council instead of coming back with basically a 34% increase in the project? I think I would have liked a couple options presented to me and then let council vote on it. This way here, we only have two options, vote for it or not vote for it. There's a 34% increase. And so I guess that's my question. Why wouldn't a scale back version come back to council instead of implementing this 34% on the project?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, I would say two things. One is in response to Councillor Vezo-Allen's question, we would come back with recommendations to council. So that may involve scaling back the plaza, but we would look at all options for the plaza. Related to the options, when we got the Class C cost estimate, certainly staff spent a lot of time going through that and looking at ways we could either shrink the footprint or adjust the plaza to bring it more in line with budget. Ultimately, what you see in front of you tonight is what we felt would be the minimum requirements for the plaza to get the features that we felt were important, maintain those features in the plaza design, which we think they all will contribute to the overall success of the plaza. So what we did was basically look at the plaza design, determine those minimum features, and come to council with our recommendation that says, you know, this is the plaza that we believe we need, and this is the cost of that project.
Thank you for your response, and I don't want to debate with you because, but I believe that if you have the opportunity to come back with a scaled down version, then I think that was an opportunity to come back to council and let council decide and not implement this 34% increase. And basically it's take it or leave it. And I'll just leave it at that, Mr. Bear. I thank you for your response.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bruni, is that the extent of your questions?
That's the extent. Thank you.
Councillor Nero?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Along the same line, same path as Councillor Vezo-Allen was taking us on. Question on the financing or clarification, if I could. Mr. Mayor, the additional increase that we're looking to authorize tonight is the 1,472,000. But there's also the responsibility for the potential of another 400,000 if no further sponsorship comes forward. And I don't want to be negative, but if we take those numbers, we're looking at a potential increase of almost 1.8 or more, 1.8 million. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Nero, that is correct.
So the 1.8 million. I do, like Councillor Vezo-Allen, have a similar concern. My concern is if we don't receive the NOHFC funding, I still support this plaza, but I think without that 2 million in NOHFC, I think we really need to look at what comes back before we go any further. So those are my concerns, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nero. I have Councillor Hollingsworth next.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship. To Mr. Ver, several of my questions were already asked, such as, feedback from the public, but can you comment on the basically more the assessment? As you know, I'm an advocate for groups with autism and so forth and special needs. Can you elaborate again on the facilities, maybe some of the interactive equipment that will focus on this special group?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, our consulting team did meet with the Accessibility Committee, and we're looking at building in to the play feature an accessible component to the play feature element of the plaza. And certainly other elements of the plaza will be constructed with accessibility in mind. I'll defer to Mr. Berman if he has any further comment on that aspect of the approach.
Thank you, Tom. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, accessibility is, as I mentioned, always top of mind in design of public spaces. All of the grade transitions or ramps in the plaza are at the best practice 5%. Skating rink is flush with the adjacent grade. As Tom mentioned, we will have special play elements in the play area specifically for children with either physical or physical limitations or alternatives, and we will go back to the Accessibility Committee for review of that before anything hits the ground. So we would look to your committee's input for that to see if we are on the right path.
Okay, that's great. And I know that sometimes our pools will have certain hours for groups with the autism. So I'm glad, as you said earlier in your presentation, you're working closely with the group, but I just want to reemphasize that because it's such an important point. Thank you. Two other questions. Basically, just going through the list, glad that there's fundraising we talked about. And going back to Mr. Ver, can you just elaborate how this will help our local businesses? There's a lot of concerns that businesses unfortunately are closing. When this was first designed, COVID wasn't happening. But can you shed some positive on how this is going to help business? And also, are you in the process of working on a downtown business strategy where there might be some incentives for small businesses? I know that you're working very closely from the economic development point of view, but can you just touch on that just to give some more positive and hope for the small business linking this into this project?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, certainly the one of the primary goals of this project is from a downtown revitalization and economic development perspective. And we really feel that having this plaza in the downtown will help to draw more foot traffic into the downtown, which is going to benefit all businesses in the downtown core. And the programming that we will offer within the plaza and the features of the plaza, provide an opportunity for just that 4 seasons of activities that will get people down into the downtown, which will benefit all the businesses in that commercial area and overall in the downtown. Further to that, there are certainly the benefits of the plaza construction itself and the economic benefits there. And then the other side is the livability and appeal of the downtown. We believe this plaza will be a contributor that's going to attract further investment in the downtown, which will attract further residential development in the downtown to have more people living in the downtown. And certainly that'll be a key aspect to supporting businesses, having more residents in the downtown living there and frequenting the businesses in that area.
Okay, thank you. And 2 other questions through you, Ms. Worship, to you, Mr. Ver again. I had a couple emails from constituents that do feel that this is a worthy project, but their concern is the shoulder season when the ice rink's not there, for example. And someone did suggest, and actually when I lived in Toronto, in the shoulder season at a plaza on Queens Quay, they actually had small little boats that kids can go down and rent for like a loonie, and you can sail little boats around in the shoulder season. So there's still some type of fun activity, and it's still considered, like a shoulder event. Would you consider something like this?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hollingsworth, certainly our staff have met, thinking ahead if this project is approved to the activities that'll take place in the plaza. And absolutely, we'll be looking at all options to drive activity and events in there throughout the year. And your point is taken about the shoulder season special events that, we can have in there that will still bring people down during that time period.
Okay, such as the small boat idea. When you were kids, you used to play with small boats size of your hand or your arm. Last point, which I believe that the mayor may elaborate on, is the safety strategy. You mentioned in your presentation that safety is going to be a priority. And as you may know, we did put forward, looking forward to a safety strategy, basically report, which I put forward, but safety is important, but I believe the mayor is going to comment on that as well. So thank you. And again, it's my understanding that if we approve this tonight, it's showing our interests, but financially, you're still going to be coming back to us, I believe, with a further budget. Depends on the $2 million that we may or may not receive. So thank you.
For clarity, Councillor Hollingsworth, staff wouldn't be coming back to us if we do receive the 2 million and there are no budgetary changes, like the project comes in at that number. They'd only come back to us if that funding didn't come through.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I have Councillor Shoemaker next on my list, and my list ends there, but I know I have additional people that want to speak to this. Councillor Scott, I see your hand. Councillor Dufour. Okay, Councillor Gardy. So Councillor Shoemaker, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Ver, or Mr. Berman, I suppose. I want to pick up on Councillor Bruni's question. When the cost estimates came in higher, substantially higher, what value management was done to scale back the costs?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, a number of value management exercises were pursued, and we went through a number of the features of the plaza. So basically looking at every element of that plaza and seeing if there's a way that we could adjust to help us reduce the cost. The primary elements that we looked at were removing the larger fountain feature. We looked at the surface treatments, so moving from paving stones throughout the entirety of the plaza to different surface treatments. We looked at removing elements, such as the shade structures and scaling back on some elements of the stage, the lighting, trimming here and there. So I think safe to say we probably looked at every element of the plaza and, did some analysis to see, is there an opportunity to revise and reduce it in order to bring the project in closer to budget.
Okay. Oftentimes when we see projects like this being proposed, I know I sit on the McMeekin Center, the Twin Pad Arena, there was very clear, here's what we've taken out of the project and here's what it saved us. But I don't see that in this report. So of the exercises you went through, what was the amount that came out of the project?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker, from the cost estimate, the exercise that we went through helped to reduce the plaza would be in total over $2 million to get it to where it is today.
So just stop there, Mr. Ver. So just so this is clear to everybody, because I think this is an important point, and I think it gets to Councillor Shoemaker's point and to Councillor Bruni's point. When the plaza as first presented to us and as we approved was costed, it was costed in excess of what you're seeing today. So I think, and Tom will clarify this, there was $2 million to build the plaza that we originally saw wasn't this number. It was 2 million in excess of this. And then they scaled that back to get us to where we are today. Is that correct, Mr. Ver?
Mr. Mayor, that's correct.
So the actual cost of that original plaza was, it did 2 million more than what you're seeing today. as I understood it.
So somewhere in the 10 million range.
Mr. Vera?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Shoemaker, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, well, that would have been helpful information to include in the report, in my opinion. So, I mean, if NOHFC comes to us with 2 million, that's great. I mean, I think we're still stretching the limits of what the city can do here, and especially encroaching into 2 or more years of the next council's growth projects. But if they come back with anything less than 2 million, 1.9 million, for example, this is going to have to come back to us. Am I correct about that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor to Councillor Shoemaker, that's correct.
Okay. And I don't pretend to be a urban planner, but I'll ask Mr. Berman about the proposed design. It seems like there is a lot of parking for a place that is adjacent to a significant parking lot. I mean, multiple significant parking lots. There's municipal parking lot right across the street. There's a private parking lot right next to that. So is that a place where we can save some money?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that's a good observation. The parking lot has grown a bit larger from the first time you saw this. And actually that was one of the strategies we have implemented to reduce the overall cost of the plaza. It's far less expensive to put in parking lot than it is to put in plaza on a square meter basis. So that was one of the flex points that we opted to change a little bit in this revised design to make sure that we kept those big puzzle pieces intact. So the big programmatic elements, the skating rinks, the splash pad, the flexible open area and the stage, connections to those key future uses and Queen Street. We wanted to keep all of those big moves intact, but we felt that this was a reasonable compromise to allow that parking lot to grow a little bit. It will be used for sure. I mean, in an ideal world, yes, you would take up more of the site area with plaza space, but this is we feel a very good compromise to be very mindful of the budget and bring the budget back to a target that is palatable to you, council, and also still fulfilling all the big picture objectives of the plaza itself. And the other thing I'll add to the mayor's point previously, that the original budget from the previous firm who worked on this also did not consider any of the property acquisitions, some of the adjacencies, the potential of the future indoor market. And all of these have added new and exciting programs and synergies with this plaza, and they come along with added infrastructure and technical requirements too. So that also did kind of add creep to the cost from what was originally considered when you consider that before our involvement.
Yeah, thank you. I think you're looking at the parking lot question from the opposite perspective I had. I mean, we all know how expensive asphalt is to put down. Sure, it might be cheaper than other materials, but what if this was just green space? Would that not save more money?
I see. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I mean, that could be an option. We could flip some of that space into kind of picnic space. Absolutely. I mean, you're right. There is a large municipally owned lot immediately across Bay. We had proven in our previous site analysis that there is a lot of parking supply in this immediate area in downtown. Again, the indoor market, the potential of having an indoor market there would drive the need for a fair bit of parking, especially in the winter months. But that certainly would be an option. We could flip some of that space to soft space as opposed to hard space.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could to Councillor Shoemaker, I will say that one of the concerns we heard with the plaza development from some of the business owners around that area was the loss of parking. And so that was something that we had kind of built into the design as well to try and take into account some of the concerns we heard from businesses in the area looking at the plaza development.
Okay. Am I looking at this correctly though? There's 2 parking lots, right? There's a plaza parking lot, and then appears to be parking in behind. I don't know if that's Stones or Arturo's, somewhere around there, right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker. Yes, that's a good point and important to note. The north parking lot that you're seeing there is a parking lot that will be for the Stone property. They currently have additional parking that's situated near about the center of the plaza. So that's going to be relocated to the side. So that north parking lot will be private parking for the Stone business.
Gotcha. Well, I've asked my questions, but while we're on it, I'll say my comments. I think this is stretching the limits of where we are prepared to go in terms of cost. I think any higher and I would struggle to support it. Even at this cost, I would say I'm struggling to support it. I do understand the need and the purpose for a downtown plaza. I think it's great to avoid having to shut down the road, for example. It's great that we've been able to clean up some derelict buildings in the area. But at some point, we're going to have to draw the line on cost. We're at that point. While I'll hesitate to support it at this point, if any of the proposed funding doesn't come through, I don't think I will hesitate not to support it next time. So happy to see this innovative design, but know that at least from my perspective, we're at our limit.
Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Next, I have Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Ver. In regards to the property and the land that we will be using for this, I happen to know that some of the history of some of it, portions of the land were either a gas station or a bus barn. And my question is, have we tested these areas for any sort of contamination? If we're going to be having children playing there and gathering, do we know that these areas aren't contaminated? I think of a lot of areas that I know of that used to be gas stations, and there's some contamination issues that have been quite long-term in those areas. So I'm just hoping that, we have tested and we know that there is no contamination.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Scott. Yes, we have had environmental consultants that have worked with us on this project and the site, and we'll be making sure that if there's any contamination, it is remediated.
Great. All of my other questions actually have been asked. I do want to express similar concerns as Councillor Shoemaker has pointed out. It's a hard pill to swallow, and I understand why we're doing it and the purpose. It's just costs are getting toward the upper limit of what I'm comfortable with. But yeah, so that was everything I had. Thank you very much.
Councillor Dufour.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. My questions had been previously asked in great detail by Councillor Vezo-Allen. So with my comments, I just wanted to zoom out a little bit with the whole plaza discussion, because it's really, I see it as a continuation of a lot of other investments that this council and previous councils have made in our downtown. I think that when you look at the really unmitigated success of our downtown community improvement plan and the tens of millions of dollars of private investment that the city's initial investment had leveraged, I think that provides a lot of assurance for me that investing in something like a plaza is continuing that momentum and is going to continue to leverage the kind of public and private investment in our downtown that quite frankly, our whole city desperately needs. It's obviously not new information to anyone on this council that majority of our commercial real estate assessment and a large portion of our residential assessment exists downtown. And that's something that we need to continue to protect. We need to continue to ensure that our downtown is a good place to live and to visit and to enjoy. And with all of the money that we've seen the private sector put in, especially in the commercial and multifamily sector downtown, I think now is not the time to stop the ball, but to keep it rolling. We've done a great job on Bay Street. It looks fantastic. Our marina is looking wonderful. And this is something, the plaza is kind of the crown jewel on that initiative to really connect our downtown businesses and the people who operate them with the first-class waterfront that we have in Sault Ste. Marie. I know that in the past, other councils have kind of pared down projects at different times to the point at which they no longer were able to achieve the objectives that they had been designed to achieve. And that the only objective that they ended up achieving was that, they cost a little less than people wanted them to. Ultimately, looking back, though, I think a lot of people in our community wish that councils then had invested the money and had undertaken the project. And I know we had a very similar conversation around this table about the McMeekin replacement arena and about the twin pad. And ultimately, this council voted to approve that project, to approve it built as designed by staff's recommendation and by what we determined the community needed. And I think that this project should receive that same consideration. It's been told to us and studied and agreed upon multiple different levels with the Downtown Association, with Roger Brooks, with the experts on the call here tonight. We've heard from Mr. Ver that this is the minimum that we can go forward with to still achieve our stated objectives. So it's one I'm happy to support. It's one that I hope the province sees fit to support, as I believe it's a very worthy project for our community and one that will make a significant impact on our downtown. So with that, with my other hat on, I will say construction costs have gone up, not just in Sault Ste. Marie, but all across North America. And I don't project that they will be going down anytime soon. So I think now is a really critical time for the city to get this important piece of infrastructure built. And I hope that my fellow councillors will support it. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gardy.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I can tell Councillor Dufour that this fellow councillor will be supporting it. I'm hopeful that NOHFC will be supportive with the $2 million. In fact, I'd assert that it would be a shame if they didn't. We're witnessing a lot of great progress in a number of areas in our community. We was illustrated this evening about the progress in the energy sector. We've been positioning ourselves to be a leader around the environment. We've made a lot of strides on truth and reconciliation as of late, and our post-secondary institutions continue to pursue innovative opportunities between them and beyond them. And thus far, we've navigated this pandemic as well as anywhere in the province. And these are all signs of a sophisticated city, a modern city. And I'm of the opinion that any sophisticated and modern city needs an engaging and an accessible public square in its downtown. This will be ours. This is real revitalization. And I agree that it'll do a lot to attract people to want to reside in our downtown area. So I am enthusiastically supporting it at this point. Obviously, should NOHFC not support us to the degree that we hope it will, that'll be a different conversation. But right now I'm excited by the design and supportive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gardy. Do any other councilors want to speak on the matter? Seeing none, council, for my part, I'll say a few things. I was disappointed when the original project that we approved came back at the costing that it did. And I commend staff and Mr. Berman for going through that and making some adjustments to get us where we are now. I do think that there's certain elements of the project that if we're not going to do them or we can't afford to do them, we shouldn't move forward with it. So I do think there's a scope where Councillor Shoemaker points out that we are at a limit now as far as an appetite to spend. We also have to make sure we're doing the money we're spending is being spent in a worthwhile way. And I think that the project that's before you is the project that we need to do if we're going to do a project at all. In that respect, I think it's important that we do a project. We have a number of private sector business owners and property owners that are making very significant investments in our downtown, $1 million investments, multi-million dollar investments. And I would suggest that we have to lead and show that we're willing to do the same. We have done some really great things to date. I think Bay Street has been well received across the community as a worthwhile project, even if some did question the price tag at the outset. And the need to do it at the outset. I think a lot of people now see the value in having done that project, Queen Street is on the books to be substantially fixed up, and that will look great when it's done. We've got a really neat and innovative plan for Spring Street in the future that hopefully a council can tackle and complete. In the meantime, this really creates a heart in our downtown, and it's not a random project. It comes from a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of consultation. It comes from some expert reports and some strategies that we put together and we're acting on. And frankly, it can create some significant activity, and it can be a positive infrastructure project. I don't think it's a high risk project, but I appreciate council's concern about the price tag and the price tag growing. I share those concerns, but I still think at the price tag it's currently at, it's an important project, and we should move forward with it kind of as a demonstration of our own confidence in our community and our downtown. You've done a lot. This council has done a lot of work to date on these initiatives on improving our downtown. Councillor Hollingsworth referenced earlier her downtown safety initiative, and I know staff is working on that, and I expect staff will be bringing that back to council shortly, and you can have discussions on that initiative. And I know that we'll continue to focus on doing what we can to improve our community and grow assessment. But we can't grow assessment if we're not willing to make our own infrastructure investments. And I think this is a really positive one to make. I think it's a project that's been largely very positively received by our community. And I think it gives us a really good opportunity to improve the functionality and the attractive nature of our downtown. So I'm happy to support it tonight. And we will work aggressively to hopefully earn NOHFC support. If we get that support, we will move ahead immediately. And if we don't get that support, we'll have to revisit this, and we will as a group, and we'll make a decision at that time. So Madam Clerk, with that noted, if we could have a vote on the resolution, please.
I have a motion by Councillors Bruni and Hilsinger. Resolved that the report of the Deputy CAO Community Development and Enterprise Services dated May 10, 2021 concerning development of the downtown plaza be received, and that Council authorize an additional $1,472,068 in funding to come from the Community Growth Initiatives line item in 2022, 2023, and 2024. Further, that Council approve the plaza development with a total project cost of $8,447,068 with a total city contribution of $5,347,068 and expected annual operating costs of $265,000. Further, that Council authorize staff to finalize construction drawings and issue a tender for the construction of the downtown plaza with the plaza construction cost and fees estimated to be $7,844,000. Further, that Council confirms that the city will be responsible for any cost overruns in the project or any shortfall in fundraising.
All in favor? Councillor, Councillor Bruni, you're saying yes, Councillor Bruni.
I'm sorry. I just want some clarification. In the resolution, it states to go out and get a tender, a bid, or did I mishear?
That's in the resolution, but that's subject to our funding, but I'll let Mr. Ver speak to that.
Okay, no, that's fine. If that's all I have to know. So it's subject to funding.
I'll let Mr. Ver answer the question. Mr. Ver?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, that's correct. It is subject to funding approval from NOHFC.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
It's no problem, Councillor Bruni. You were on mute there, so I didn't hear you speaking. I apologize. All in favor? Okay, motion is carried. Madam Clerk, do you have all the votes recorded?
I just need Councillor Bruni.
Councillor Bruni voted in the affirmative, I believe. Councillor Bruni, can you nod if that was the case? I think Councillor Bruni's froze. I think that's the problem here. I think he's having some technical.
I see. Okay. And it carries unanimously.
Okay. If I read that wrong, he'll tell us when he gets back, but I'm pretty sure I saw his hand. Okay, that brings us to the consent agenda, Council. So 6.1 has been pulled from consent. So we'll start with the consent agenda. Who has matters on the consent agenda? Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 6.6, open data.
Go ahead, Councillor Shoemaker. Councillor Scott, I assume on the same matter. Yeah, I'll come to you next.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I guess to Mr. Cochmelio, Mr. Cucimilio, there's not too much detail on the costs of some of the things you set out as things the city would have to do in order to implement an open data catalog. So do you have those numbers, or would you be able to refine them a little bit if we sent this back?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Shoemaker. At this point, I do not have the numbers. We would have to further investigate in the additional investment that would have to go towards technological infrastructure, staffing commitments, staffing resources for those costs.
I think in order to make an informed decision on this, we're going to need that. I think we'll, we all, I hope anyways, would support the transparency that comes with an open data catalog, and many municipalities have them. So, if it's a matter, I guess it depends on where it falls in the cost scale. So I'd like to refer this back to staff for further information on the cost of implementing some of the details that Mr. Cucimilio sets out in his report.
Okay, so Councilor Shoemaker, what we're going to do is I'm going to pull this one from consent, and then we'll deal with it when we get through the consent agenda.
Okay.
Right? So Councilor Scott, I'll come back to you when we get to that matter. Any other matters in the consent agenda, Councilor Shoemaker, since I started with you?
No, thank you.
Okay, any other matters in the consent agenda, Council? Councilor Bruni and then Councilor Gardy. Councilor Bruni, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Agenda item 6.15 regarding court security and prisoner transportation. I guess this would be to Ms. Shell, if she's here, if she's on.
You can ask the question. Go ahead, Councilor Bruni,
Okay.
and if she's not the CEO, we'll handle it.
Okay, I'll ask the question. Has the province increased the payments in the past 4 or 5 years? And are we at a break-even point for police services? Who provides this service? That's my question.
Mr. CEO, are you able to deal with that? Oh, sorry, the CFO is on.
He's here now.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni. That would probably be a better question to pose to Police Services Board. I don't think there has been significant increases in this grant. It is a grant that goes directly to them. And as to whether or not it covers the full cost of providing those court security services, again, Police Services would have to answer that.
Okay, so why would it be in our agenda then, Mr. Mayor? Or
Well, the CEO will have to answer.
yeah, okay, Mr. White.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Bruni, there do remain some aspects of police services activities that do require the agreements to be executed by the municipality. Another example of that would be the police services contract with the Township of Prince for police services. Intuitively, you may expect that to be an agreement between Prince and the Police Services Board, but under the legislation, it has to be between the two municipalities. So there just are some that happen to fall and need to be dealt with by the municipality.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. White.
Okay, anybody else on that matter? Councilor Bruni, do you have any other matters?
No, Mr. Mayor, everything is taken care of.
Thank you, Councilor Bruni. Councilor Gardy?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just one item, 6.8, the Ontario Heritage Act designation of the Wawanosh Monument. Through you to Mrs. McLeod, I believe. I think it's interesting and appropriate, and I was just hoping that for the public, you could explain a bit of what the Heritage Committee is doing with this. Thank you.
Virginia?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Gardy. The Municipal Heritage Committee received a designation application through Madison Bafano, and it was also brought to the committee by Krista McCracken. for consideration. From that point, research was done and the committee passed a resolution recommending that the monument to be designated as under the Heritage Act. So yeah, we're very excited about the designation. We've worked closely with Kristen McCracken, who works for Algoma University and who's the curator of the Shinwalk Residential School Center. And she's reviewed the application and we're putting it forth for your consideration this evening.
Thanks, Virginia. It's like I said, it's appropriate. It's interesting. I'm fully supportive, as I'm sure everybody else on council is. But I just wanted you to highlight that for the public. Thanks very much. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I think this is a really good thing to do, and I think it raises a level of awareness that a lot of people think of when they think of residential schools. They think of Shinwalk, and they often don't go back in history to this one. So I think this is a positive report, and I'm glad that we're working on this in conjunction with some other partners, and we're looking to do this. Councilor Shoemaker?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could perhaps add a little context on the report from the Municipal Heritage Committee's perspective. I sit on that committee, and there was a lot of discussion on the wording of the plaque itself. And I think we recognize, Municipal Heritage Committee recognizes that if this plaque were to be written today, it would obviously have a lot more context on what took place at residential schools. It was written many years ago, and so it does not have that context, but is still, I think, an important designation to allow the community to research further what went on at residential schools.
Completely agreed, Councilor Shoemaker. Thank you for your work on that committee. Anybody else on this agenda item? Councilor Gardy, do you have any other matters on consent? Seeing none, I think that exhausts the consent agenda, with the exception of 6.2 or 6.6. So, Madam Clerk, if we could have a motion on the consent agenda, then we'll go to 6.6.
A motion by Councillors Nero and Shoemaker resolved that all items listed under date May 10, 2021, agenda item 6, consent agenda, save and accept agenda items 6.1 and 6.6 be approved as recommended.
All in favor? Motion is carried. So that brings us to 6.6. So Councilor Shoemaker, you want to move to refer this back to staff and essentially what I understand is a kind of a list of the costings that they refer to in this report.
That's right.
Is there a seconder for that? Okay, so the seconder is Councilor Scott. So now, just to be clear, we're talking about the referral motion, referring it back to staff. Mr. CAO, do you need any clarity on this motion? Do you need it to be clear on what council's looking for here?
Not for the motion itself, Mr. Mayor. It can be simply referred back to staff for further review and report back to council.
Okay.
By the discussion, we know what needs to be included in it.
Thank you. So do we have any comments or questions on the referral motion? Okay, so Councilor Dufour, do you have, go ahead.
Yeah, just for the referral motion, what kind of scope of costing are we looking for? Something that's inclusive of like all city departments, possible chief technology officer oversight, or is it just like, are we looking at just to create an open data portal and that's it? I guess I'm just wondering from some of my colleagues what exactly to be costed.
That's a Shoemaker. Sorry, go ahead, Mr. CEO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Dufour. Certainly, we would interpret it as mainly addressing the needs of an open data portal. That being said, the lack of resources that we have now for IT, both human and financial resources, go beyond that. So obviously, they're going to be mentioned in the report.
Okay. Yeah, that was my understanding from reading the report, that we were lacking not just in a budget, but in significant staffing resources. So I just wanted to make sure that would include any response. Thanks.
Any further comment or question on the referral motion? We'll vote on that. All in favor? I'm sorry, Councillor Scott, did you have comment there or were you putting go ahead?
Thank
It's
you, Mr.
passed,
Mayor.
but yeah.
Just a quick comment anyways. Even if we could get some sort of rollout of an implementation, like if we started, I know open data is scary and I work with data every day in my job. So I understand that it's very broad. So even if we just got some costs back to maybe start, I think even starting somewhere, and I understand that there's the human resources limitations, but seeing costs of even what it would just be for software that we would need, things like that, it would go a long way, especially if we consider it for future budgets. I think just a little bit more meat on the dollar value would have been beneficial, I think here. I do know that I think the rest of council appreciates the lack of resourcing that we do have for our IT department and the amount of work that they're doing on such a small outfit of people. It's well known. So I think that this coming back to it with even just a more thorough look at the costs and even some options about how much it would be to just get the ball rolling, because I do think an open data platform is important. I'm not so sure that what the other communities in Ontario that are comparable are doing, but I do think that this is an important direction to head, and I think that's huge for it's huge for I'm drawing a blank on the word, but for accountability for us as well as the city. I think that transparency was the word I was looking for. I think that would go a long way. So just getting that back would be huge. So that's kind of where I was looking for when Councillor Shoemaker suggested to refer back to staff. Maybe if they could bring something like that back.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Scott. Okay, so that brings us to, Madam Clerk, if I'm correct, that brings us to section 8, and we have one resolution under 8.1. Is that correct?
Just haven't closed any at Councillor Bruni and Councillor Gardy. Okay.
They both voted in favor of the referral back.
You're correct. That does take us to agenda item 7.8.2, the Board and Committee of Council review. And before I read the motion, we were looking for 3 members of council to participate. And I have heard from Councillor Shoemaker that he would be willing. So there's 2 more openings.
So we'll take in Councillor Bruni. You're putting your hand up here. You have interest in participating in that. And any other city councillor that is interested in participating in that? Councillor Hilsinger. Okay. Is there any other additional ones that are interested? I saw Councillor Scott and Gardy's hand go up, but it went up after Councillor Hilsinger's hand. So I think you were just trying to fill the gap, but since she's put her hand up there and beat you to it, we'll go with those 3. Okay. So we have Councillor Shoemaker, Councillor Bruni, and Councillor Hilsinger.
So can I have a different seconder than Councillor Shoemaker for that motion?
Councillor Gardy.
Councillor Gardy. Motion by Councillors Nero and Gardy resolved that the report of the Deputy City Clerk dated May 10, 2021 concerning boards and committees of council review be received, and that the City Clerk, Deputy City Clerk, City Solicitor, Deputy CAO Community Development and Enterprise Services, Manager of Recreation and Culture, Councillors Shoemaker, Bruni, and Hilsinger be appointed to the Boards and Committee Review Task Force.
All in favor? Motion is carried.
And that will take us to agenda item 8.1, reopening of outdoor rink. It's a motion by Councillor Scott and Shoemaker, whereas Sault Ste. Marie has a long and storied history of hockey throughout the community. And whereas in the past year, the importance of outdoor activities for both physical and mental health has increased due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas there is an increased demand for access to these activities across the city, specifically for an outdoor rink in Ward 5. And whereas the legacy of one of Sault Ste. Marie's most selfless individuals should continue to be honored in a way that is most fitting. Now therefore be it resolved that Council directs staff to include the reopening and operation of a community outdoor rink at Mike Zook Park in the 2022 budget for Council's consideration.
Councillor Scott, do you want to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it's no secret that I grew up in Bayview, and I have a proud thoughts on where I was raised and all of that. I grew up less than about half a block away from Mike Zook's house. I grew up playing in Mike Zook's rink in his backyard on Metzger Street. And in the summers, I grew up playing in Mike and June Zook's garden. They were very community-minded people. That rink that was at the Mike Zook Memorial Park was also a part of my childhood. Having gone to Bayview Public School, we would do all sorts of outdoor activities there. I can appreciate the times when they did decide to close it. I understand that communities ebb and flow, but as it currently stands, this is one of the biggest things that people told me way back when I was campaigning door to door in Bayview. There's a lot of young families there, families of the people who grew up playing on this rink, and they all told me the same thing, that they wanted this rink back. They have fond memories of this rink. It brought the community together, and there was never a day when you would see it snowing and there wasn't 6 kids with shovels out there shoveling this rink. And I do think that it's one of those things that would truly honor Mr. Zook in a very fitting way. This past weekend, in fact, this news made it all the way to Seattle. I spoke with Ron Francis about this, and he was very much in support of us trying to get this going again. I know that he has very strong memories of Mike and June Zook, and I'm sure you could say the same about anyone else throughout the Sioux Greyhounds. Joe Thornton for the Toronto Maple Leafs, I bet you would tell you great stories about Mr. and Mrs. Zook. It's a pretty important thing to that community, and I'd love to see it come back. We don't have an outdoor rink in Ward 5, and this would be pretty big for me and for the people that live out here. So I hope we can get the support of council for this. And all I'm asking really is just to include it in the budget as well. So I can't imagine it's a big cost, but it'll go a long way for the community. So hopefully we can get council support. Thank you.
So for clarity, Councillor Scott, the way I understand the resolution, it'd be referring it to staff, and staff would cost it and put it on the supplemental list. It wouldn't be approved to be in the budget until we go through the budget process. Is that correct?
If that's the way that it'll have to go, I mean, ideally, I would just like to put it right into the budget. But if that's the way that everyone would approve it, then that would be the direction I'll go for sure.
Well, it's a big difference to me, because I would support the first, have it costed, so we could talk about it at budget time, but I wouldn't support the second tonight. So
then the first.
Okay, so Councillor Shoemaker, did you want to speak to the motion as a seconder?
Just very briefly, Mr. Mayor, I'll say that I thank Councillor Scott for bringing this forward. I think it's important that we have recreational activities available across the city. Obviously, we have a concentration, I would say, of rinks, outdoor rinks in the downtown, which is great because it offers proximity to every area of town. But I think spreading out the resources we do have across the community, there is a lot of benefit to that, and for all the reasons that Councillor Scott set out, I think this is worthwhile to investigate.
Do we have any questions or comments from councillors? Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you. I just want to echo my 2 councillors that are putting forward. These outdoor rinks are so powerful in a neighborhood, and it does reinforce our history. It does reinforce that we do have a lot of great hockey players that have gone on to be professionals. So I think this is wonderful that it's being brought to our table tonight. So thank you for doing that. And this is a small micro idea. Maybe in the future, if this is successful, maybe we can consider going back to the Heritage Committee to do a small, inexpensive plaque that are associated with our outdoor rinks to say that wonderful, successful NHL hockey players, or even just regular hockey players, have played in these areas, such as, Phil Esposito Park. I would really like to see this type of culture, this type of heritage be scattered throughout our community to remind our community that we've been very successful in the hockey area. And wouldn't it be nice if these hockey outdoor rinks have some type of story attached to them? And that's just a small idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other counselors? See none, all in favor? Motion is carried. Madam Clerk, just let us know when you have all the votes there.
Yep, we are ready to go to the consent motion for bylaws. A motion by Councillors Bruni and Hilsinger resolved that all bylaws under item 11 of the agenda under date May 10, 2021 be approved.
All in favor? Carried.
And a motion by Councillors Nero and Shoemaker that this council now adjourn.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you, council.
Good night, all.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.